Chapter 919. Qin Feiyang nodded and said with a smile, "Yes, life is more important than anything else." The state preceptor asked with a smile, "Then tell this old man frankly, have you ever regretted what you did?" "What things? Killing the princes? Or challenging the emperor? Or going against you?" Qin Feiyang asked back. The state preceptor smiled faintly and said, "Do you still need this old man to explain? You should be well aware of it." Qin Feiyang sighed softly and said, "I'm not good at guessing riddles." The state preceptor shook his head and laughed. The two were like old friends, sitting in the square drinking tea and chatting, without any sense of nervousness. In the private room, the linen-clothed old man looked at Qin Feiyang from afar, his old face full of admiration, and suddenly said, "Zhang Er." "What?" Lu Zhang turned his head and looked at the linen-clothed old man suspiciously. The linen-clothed old man asked, "If it were you in such a desperate situation, would you still be so calm?" Lu Zhang fell silent. In all honesty, he couldn't do it. Not to mention him, perhaps no one could be as calm as Qin Feiyang in the face of the imminent beheading crisis. He had to admit that he had underestimated this little cousin of his all this time. In the square, the state preceptor looked up at the sun again, put down the teacup and looked at Qin Feiyang, and said with a faint smile, "It's almost time. If you have any last words, quickly say them." Qin Feiyang said, "No last words, but I have a wish." "What wish?" the state preceptor asked. Qin Feiyang said, "Can you tear off your disguise and let me see your original appearance?" The state preceptor raised his eyebrows without a trace. Qin Feiyang raised the corner of his mouth and said jokingly, "It must be very tiring to pretend to be a good old man in front of the world all day long." The state preceptor chuckled, but his smile had become a little stiff. Qin Feiyang said with a smile, "It seems that my words have made you very unhappy." Why should this old man care about the words of a dying man? The state preceptor smiled indifferently. "Die. To me, death is not scary. The scariest thing is that I won't be able to see the person I miss the most before I die." Qin Feiyang slowly got up and looked in the direction of the imperial palace. A hint of mockery flashed across the imperial tutor's eyes as he thought to himself, "Don't look forward to it. Your mother won't come." Qin Feiyang frowned. The imperial preceptor sent a voice transmission. "You still don't know, right? In order to plead for you, your mother has been kneeling in Bright Sky Palace for an entire morning." "What?" Qin Feiyang trembled both physically and mentally. In the depths of his calm heart, a monstrous rage suddenly surged. Bright Heaven Palace was no longer the Bright Heaven Palace of the past. It was now the residence of the current Celestial Empress and the little prince. For him, his mother had actually knelt in Bright Heaven Palace. He could imagine how much humiliation his mother had suffered. He couldn't stand it. "Are you very angry? But unfortunately, you can't do anything now. But don't worry, after you die and I get Chang Shui in the castle, I won't make things difficult for her. At most, I'll just cripple her cultivation." The imperial preceptor secretly sent a voice transmission. After that, he no longer paid attention to Qin Feiyang. He picked up the teacup and tasted it with a smile. Qin Feiyang suddenly lowered his head and stared at the imperial preceptor. His eyes flashed with shocking killing intent. "The time has come." At this time, the commander of the invincible Black Army said indifferently. Qin Feiyang closed his eyes and took a deep breath. When he opened his eyes again, his eyes were dead silent. "Let's go." The commander of the invincible Black Army stepped forward and grabbed Qin Feiyang's shoulder from behind. "Get your dirty hands off me. I can walk by myself," Qin Feiyang said coldly. He slapped the commander's arm away and strode toward the center of the square. The commander of the invincible Black Army sneered and turned to look at the imperial preceptor. "My lord, this subordinate will personally behead Qin Feiyang." "Okay." The imperial preceptor nodded. The commander of the invincible Black Army's eyes flashed with killing intent. He quickly caught up with Qin Feiyang and said to himself, "I didn't want to target you, but I have no choice." Qin Feiyang said expressionlessly, "Just say what you want to say. Don't beat around the bush. I know you too well. If you don't die, I'll definitely die in your hands. Because I almost killed you in the past. So, I can only feel at ease if I personally behead you," the commander of the invincible Black Army said. "You're quite aware of it." Qin Feiyang was surprised. How can you survive in the Imperial Palace if you're not aware of it? The commander of the Invincible Black Army sneered. The Kirin Army's commander had been standing in the center of the square. Seeing Qin Feiyong and the commander of the Invincible Black Army, he slightly frowned but didn't say anything. Kneel! When Qin Feiyong walked to the center of the square, the commander of the Invincible Black Army shouted with a cold face. Kneel? In this world except for my mother, no one is qualified to make me kneel. Qin Feiyong said proudly. Stubborn. The commander of the Invincible Black Army was furious. He reached out his hand and grabbed the back of Qin Feiyong's head, pushing Qin Feiyong down to the ground. However, Qin Feiyong was like an iron pine, standing proudly on the ground. His legs didn't bend at all. Seeing this, the Kirin Army's commander couldn't bear it. He turned his head and looked at the State Master, but found that the State Master pretended not to see it. Kneel! The commander of the Invincible Black Army was even angrier. He kicked Qin Feiyong's calf. Qin Feiyong immediately bent his legs and kneeled on the ground. The commander of the Invincible Black Army showed a trace of disdain. How dare you be so arrogant in front of me? Do you really think you're still the 14th prince? However, when Qin Feiyong's knees were about to touch the ground, Qin Feiyong stood up abruptly. What? The commander of the Invincible Black Army was stunned. Then he became angry and kicked Qin Feiyong's legs again. Stop! The Kirin Army's commander couldn't stand it anymore. He stepped beside Qin Feiyong and pushed the commander of the Invincible Black Army away with his palm. What are you doing? The commander of the Invincible Black Army kept stepping back. After he stabilized his body, he stared at the Kirin Army in shock and anger. Although Qin Feiyong has been removed from his position as a prince, he still has the blood of his majesty in his body. Don't you think you're being too careless? The Kirin Army's commander said with a sullen face. The commander of the Invincible Black Army raised his eyebrows and said in a deep voice. His Majesty has said that he is no longer a member of the royal family. Now you're trying to stop me. Are you trying to give him a chance to escape? How dare you? Who gave you the guts to speak to this commander like this? The Kirin Army's commander was furious. Although they were both commanders, the commander of the Kirin Army had a higher position in the Imperial Palace than the commander of the Invincible Black Army. If it was before, he would have slapped the commander of the Invincible Black Army. But it was different now. Now that the commander of the Invincible Black Army was with the State Preceptor, he had to consider the State Preceptor's face. Even so, the commander of the Invincible Black Army was a bit scared when he saw the Kirin Army's commander was angry. The Kirin Army's commander is right. Qin Feiyong has the blood of the Emperor in his body. Let's leave him some dignity. The State Preceptor glanced at the Kirin Army's commander and said, Yes. The commander of the Invincible Black Army bowed and replied. Then, he looked at the Kirin Army's commander and said coldly, Are you satisfied now? Can you step aside? The Kirin Army's commander raised his eyebrows and walked away. However, he secretly sent a voice transmission to Qin Feiyong. Why don't you escape now? Now that they had left the prison of God, Qin Feiyong could hide in the castle and slowly find a chance to escape. But now, Qin Feiyong didn't seem to have such a plan. If I escape now, they will use my mother to threaten me again. I don't want to put my mother in danger again, Qin Feiyong said to himself. Alas! If Her Majesty could hear this, I believe she would be very happy. Don't worry. I will take good care of your friends in the future. I will also persuade His Majesty to treat Her Majesty better. The Kirin Army's commander sighed deeply and sent a voice transmission. Thank you. Qin Feiyong thanked him secretly. Then, he glanced at the crowd in the square and slowly closed his eyes. At this moment, he didn't fear death at all. He was very calm and ordinary. He even felt relieved from the bottom of his heart. Since he was 10 years old, he had been struggling to survive. He didn't have the happiness and laughter that other children had. He only had Uncle Yuanbo by his side. But in the end, Uncle Yuanbo also left him, and he became a person. He had been really tired all these years. He hated everyone and even God. Why was it so unfair to him? He tried hard to change everything and take back everything that he had lost. But, in the face of the supreme imperial power, he felt deeply powerless. Maybe in some people's eyes, he was a sign of incompetence. But after so many years, he really couldn't hold on any longer. He wasn't a perfect person, and there was no perfect person in the world. He also had a weak side. If it were anyone else, they would have probably collapsed a long time ago after encountering the setbacks and bumps in Qin Feiyang's life. It wasn't easy for him to hold on until now and only admit defeat. Clang! Suddenly, along with a deafening metallic sound, a golden halberd appeared in front of the commander of the invincible Black Army. The halberd was 6 feet long and looked like it was made of gold. The blade of the halberd emitted a piercing light. At this moment, the square fell into a dead silence. Everyone held their breath and looked at the commander of the invincible Black Army. The commander of the invincible Black Army stood behind Qin Feiyang and reached out his hand to grab the halberd. Then he slowly raised it. "Grandpa, Feiyang can't die. Can you think of a way to save him?" Ren Wuxuang looked at this scene and tears came out of his eyes. "Xuang, this is the Emperor's order. You can't go against it." The old master sighed. Sigh. Dong Zhengyang and the others also sighed. As the saying goes, even a vicious tiger won't eat its cubs. However, this current emperor was actually ruthless enough to kill his own son. How heartless! It was no wonder that Qin Feiyang hated his father so much. However, there was one person who didn't look worried at all. There was even a faint smile on his face. This person was Lu Xingqian. "Brother Qin, isn't it too early to be free now? My plan can't be carried out without you," he muttered to himself and raised his head to look at a restaurant in the east. Mu Qing and the others were standing in front of the window, staring at the central square. Mu Qing also raised her head and looked at Lu Xingqian as if she had sensed his gaze. Chapter 9:20. Mu Qing showed a relieved smile. At the same time, the atmosphere in the central square had reached an unprecedented tense point. Everyone held their breath and looked at the halberd that was raised high. Under the sunlight, the blade emitted a dazzling light. Finally, noon arrived. "Kill!" The Imperial Master lowered his head and uttered a cold word. He was still sitting in the armchair, holding the teacup like a king. He didn't look at Qin Feiyang at all. Cold and ruthless. It was vividly displayed by him. As soon as the Imperial Master spoke, the commander of the invincible Black Army was filled with killing intent. Clang! The halberd that was raised high suddenly trembled and emitted a deafening metallic sound. It was aimed at Qin Feiyang's neck. In the end, no one can save you. Looking at this scene, Zhuge Mingyang sneered and walked out of the pavilion. Because in his opinion, Qin Feiyang was going to die. There was no need to continue watching. It was not only Zhuge Mingyang. Everyone on scene also thought that way. Qin Feiyang wouldn't have a chance to live when the blade was about to fall. However, everything was out of everyone's expectation. The halberd was about to fall on Qin Feiyang's neck. Everyone could already foresee the tragic scene of Qin Feiyang's head being separated from his body. Boom! But at this moment, a terrifying pressure erupted like a volcano, instantly enveloping the entire central square. Everything was still. The commander of the invincible Black Army stopped moving. The halberd stopped an inch away from Qin Feiyang's neck. At this moment, time seemed to have stopped. Everyone in the central square was still in the same position as before. But the people in the nearby restaurants weren't restrained. "What's going on?" Zhuge Mingyang, who had just turned around, was shocked and confused. He immediately looked at the central square. This pressure. When he saw the situation in the square, his heart was in turmoil. Even the commander of the invincible Black Army was restrained. Who was it? He scanned his surroundings, looking for the owner of the pressure. In the meantime, all the people in the restaurants near the square were also looking for the owner of the pressure, including Ren Wuxuang and the others. In the end, everyone's gaze was locked onto an old man. It's him. Yiglao. The faces of Ren Wuxuang and the others were instantly filled with ecstasy. Back in the divine prison, they had seen Yiglao and knew how powerful Yiglao was. Although he might not be able to save Qin Feiyang, as long as he was here, Qin Feiyang would definitely not die. However, the others didn't know Yiglao's identity, let alone his strength. At this moment, his face was filled with shock and confusion. They were shocked because of Yiglao's strength and courage. One had to know. Now, the state preceptor was personally overseeing the situation. However, This old man dared to openly release his pressure to prevent the commander of the invincible Black Army from killing Qin Feiyang. This was a blatant provocation. What made them confused was, who was this old man? What did he have to do with Qin Feiyang? Why hadn't they seen or even heard of him before? In the central square, everyone was restrained by Yigleo's pressure, except for Qin Feiyang and the state preceptor. The state preceptor was also a false god, so Yigleo's pressure couldn't restrain him. As for Qin Feiyang, it wasn't that he could ignore Yigleo's pressure, but that Yigleo deliberately didn't restrain him. Alas! A long sigh broke the atmosphere here. Qin Feiyang slowly opened his eyes and raised his head to look at Old Yi and the others. His eyes were filled with complicated emotions. Bastard! Why are you looking at me like that? Seeing this, the anger in Mu Qing's heart suddenly flared up. They came all the way here to save this bastard, but he didn't show any gratitude. Instead, he seemed to blame them for being nosy. Qin Feiyang glanced at Mu Qing indifferently. Without saying a word, he turned around and looked at the commander of the invincible Black Army. Although the commander of the invincible Black Army was restrained, his mind was still working. At this moment, he was panicking. Because Qin Feiyang could move. If Qin Feiyang wanted to kill him now, it would be as easy as stepping on an ant. However, Qin Feiyang didn't kill him. He just glanced at him and then looked away to the halberd above him. The halberd was shining with cold light. It was very sharp. Qin Feiyang reached out his hand and took the halberd from the commander of the invincible Black Army. Then, he rubbed the sharp blade. To be honest, I really want to die and be done with it. It's too tiring. You people who have always lived in the imperial capital and lived like princes will never understand how I survived all these years. So I want to be free. But some people don't want me to die. Maybe in their eyes, I still have some value. I want to die, but I can't. Do you know how painful it is? But since I didn't die this time, I have to live well. In the past, those who hurt me, those who betrayed me, I will make them pay the price one by one. Qin Feiyang muttered to himself. Although his voice was very soft, it floated clearly into everyone's ears. Everyone could clearly sense a deep helplessness, a kind of persistence, and a kind of determination in these words. All of a sudden, Qin Feiyang raised his halberd. Boom! His aura suddenly erupted. His black hair and clothes fluttered in the wind. The haze between his eyebrows instantly disappeared and was replaced by a trace of fierceness. He glanced at the crowd around the square and said word by word, "Yes, I, Qin Feiyang, am back. And my return requires blood as a sacrifice." As soon as he finished speaking, his eyes were filled with killing intent. The halberd in his hand suddenly fell and chopped toward the head of the invincible Black Army commander. "You're courting death." But at the same time, the Grand Master's eyes turned cold. He clenched his hand, and the teacup in his hand instantly shattered into pieces. Whoosh! The next moment, he stood up and took a step towards Qin Feiyang. His entire body was overflowing with killing intent. However, Qin Feiyang ignored him. He didn't even look at him. He was still holding the halberd and chopping toward the head of the invincible Black Army commander. Because he believed that someone would stop the Grand Master. The invincible Black Army commander was so anxious that he was about to go crazy. If it was before, it would be impossible for Qin Feiyang to kill him. But now, the invincible Black Army commander was imprisoned by the invincible Black Army commander. Facing Qin Feiyang, who was many times weaker than him, he could only watch the butcher's knife fall. Just as Qin Feiyang had expected. When the Grand Master made his move, Yigleo, who was standing in front of the window, disappeared without a trace. The next moment, he landed on the square in front of the Grand Master. The Grand Master had to stop. In the blink of an eye, the halberd fell, and suddenly, blood gushed out. Ah! Along with a desperate scream, the invincible Black Army commander's head fell from his neck and rolled on the ground like a rubber ball. His eyes were wide open and filled with the fear of death. Bang! The headless body also slowly fell to the ground. Blood gushed out from the bowl-sized wound and dyed the square red. This place. Once again, the square fell into a dead silence. Looking at the invincible Black Army commander's head, everyone's eyes were filled with horror. A few years ago, this person killed all the princes and almost caused the emperor to lose his bloodline. He killed the Invincible Black Army commander without mercy. One must know. The Invincible Black Army commander was not only powerful, but he was also a general of the Emperor. How could he kill him just like that? In this world, was there anything that this person did not dare to do? Everyone looked at Qin Feiyong. The halberd was still dripping blood. He stood proudly in the middle of the square. His long hair was fluttering in the wind. His 7 chi tall body was incomparably majestic. He was like the god of war, looking down on everyone. Looking at the current Qin Feiyong, everyone's heart was filled with uncontrollable fear. Damn it! Today, none of you will leave the imperial city alive. Commander of the Kirin army, I order you to immediately take your men and kill Qin Feiyong. The Grand Master was also stunned for a moment. Boom! Suddenly, he shouted loudly. His anger was burning the sky. A terrifying pressure surged forth, forcefully sweeping up Elder E and flying towards the clouds. As he soared into the clouds, he ordered the commander of the Qilin army. A battle between fake gods could easily destroy the world. Therefore they could not fight in the city. Although he was furious to the point of insanity, he still had this bit of rationality. Kill me! Qin Feiyong smiled and turned to look at the commander of the Kirin army. The commander of the Kirin army also hesitated. Seeing this, the Grand Master was furious and shouted, "What are you waiting for? Do you want to die? You'd better take care of yourself first." Yiglao sneered and charged at the Grand Master with full strength. You! The great Qin Empire has stood for 10,000 years. It is not something that you can shake. The Grand Master laughed angrily. Boom! Crack! The battle between the two false divinities began at the top of the clouds. For a moment, in the sky, the wind and clouds surged. Every time the two collided, it was as deafening as thunder. Everywhere they went, the void was shattered. Chapter 921. In the square below. Qin Feiyong only glanced at Old E and the State Master. Then he didn't pay attention to the battle anymore. Withdrawing his gaze, he looked at the commander of the Qilin army again and said, "I can kill the commander of the Invincible Black Army without hesitation, so I can also kill you without hesitation. So, before you make your move, you better think clearly." What? He threatened to kill the commander of the Kirin army? Are you kidding me? When everyone heard this, they were all extremely bewildered. Previously, the commander of the Invincible Black Army was killed by Qin Feiyong because he was restricted by the black-cloaked old man's imposing aura and didn't have the power to resist. But now, the black-robed old man was restrained by the Grand Master, and there was no pressure to restrain the commander of the Kirin army. How could Qin Feiyong kill him? Are you stupid? You actually dare to say such words that overestimate yourself. I'm the commander of the Kirin army. My duty is to maintain the order and peace of the great Qin Empire. But now you're destroying the order here, so I have no choice. The commander of the Kirin army looked at Qin Feiyong and sighed deeply. Qin Feiyong frowned and said, "You're willing to give up your life for the so-called order and peace?" "Yes," the commander of the Kirin army said without hesitation. He then waved his hand and shouted, "Kill Qin Feiyong with all your strength." As soon as he finished his words, the surrounding Invincible Black Army soldiers rushed towards Qin Feiyong with halberds in their hands. Every one of them was exuding a terrifying aura, which shocked everyone. Their eyes were shining with a fierce light. However, before they could get close, whoosh! 5 figures appeared beside Qin Feiyong at the same time. They were the mysterious lady, Mu Qing, the first ancestor, the second ancestor, and the middle-aged man from the Endless Sea. Mu Qing glanced at the Iron Black Army and said with a smile, "How should we deal with them?" "Leave no one alive," Qin Feiyong said coldly. Mu Qing turned to look at the first ancestor and the second ancestor and said with a smile, "Ancestors, it's up to you." The 2 ancestors looked at each other and smiled. Then, they turned into 2 streams of light and rushed toward the Iron Black Army. Ah! Immediately, shrill screams resounded in this place. The 2 were like ghosts, coming and going without a trace. The Invincible Black Army didn't even have time to discover them before they were killed. In less than 5 breaths, the Invincible Black Army in the square was completely annihilated. The ground was littered with corpses and severed limbs. The bloody scene was enough to make anyone shudder. They killed the Iron Black Army. They're so strong. Where did these people come from? Everyone was thinking about too. Originally, Qin Feiyong was in a situation where he would definitely die. However, a group of people suddenly appeared, each one more terrifying than the other. My cousin is quite a bit of my cousin, is he? Is quite a lot cousin is brother is a lot. Lu Zheng chuckled. Yeah. Who would have thought that Feiyong could find so many people to help him? There are 2 false gods among them. The old man in sackcloth laughed. What? 2 false gods? Lu Zheng was shocked. The burly man also looked at the old man in sackcloth in surprise. The old man in sackcloth said, in addition to the black-robed old man who fought with the state preceptor, the other false god is that middle-aged man. The 2 of them immediately looked at the middle-aged man standing beside the mysterious madam. Their hearts were in turmoil. 2 false gods came to save Qin Feiyong. Isn't this too unbelievable? According to the Heaven's Eye Jade, there are 4 false gods here. Now, including the state preceptor, there are 3. Who is the other one? The burly man suddenly said. This person hides very well. If he doesn't show up, we won't be able to detect his aura. The old man in sackcloth glanced at the crowd outside. His eyebrows were full of confusion. At the same time, in another private room, a white-haired old man wearing a mask stood in front of the window. Although his expression couldn't be seen clearly, from his eyes, there was a gratified smile. Dong! Suddenly, there was a knock on the door. Come in. The white-haired old man opened his mouth. His voice was very calm. The door opened, and 4 young men and women entered the room one after another. If Qin Feiyong was here, he would recognize these 4 people at a glance. They were Ling Yu, Zhao Yu, Luo Dan, and Feng Ranran. The 4 of them walked to the window. Ling Yu looked at Qin Feiyong in the square and said with a smile, Now you can rest assured. Rest assured. The white-haired old man nodded. Zhao Yu asked, Then how long do we have to lurk in the temple? The white-haired old man pondered for a while and said with a smile, Feiyong is not in the temple. There is not much point in you continuing to lurk. After Feiyong leaves, you will also follow this old man to cultivate in seclusion. When the 4 of them heard this, they all seemed relieved and let out a long breath. Ling Yu asked again, Then when can we confess our identities to Qin Feiyong? No hurry. Soon the miracle will open. At that time, I will send you to the Forgotten Continent and continue to assist Feiyong. Of course. This is also a good opportunity for you to train. There are countless opportunities and great fortunes in the miracle. If you can get it, it is not impossible for you to become a god in the future. The white-haired old man smiled. Become a god. The 4 of them looked at each other in shock. In the square. Seeing a group of invincible Black Army soldiers being killed by the Mu family's ancestor and second ancestor, the commander of the Kirin army was so shocked that he couldn't recover for a long time. Similarly, the state preceptor, who was fighting with Yiglao in the sky, was also shocked. This time is not like the last time. This time we came prepared. Even if your great Qin Empire sent out all the experts, you can't stop us. Yiglao smiled confidently and his attacks became more and more fierce. Come prepared. The state preceptor was shocked. While dealing with Yiglao, he looked at Mu Qing and the others. Immediately, his pupils shrank. Mu Qing's strength was naturally not a concern. He could also see through the cultivation of the Mu family's ancestor, second ancestor and the mysterious madam at a glance. However, although he couldn't sense any aura from the middle-aged man, he gave him a strong sense of crisis. At the same time, as if sensing the state preceptor's gaze, the middle-aged man suddenly raised his head and looked at the state preceptor. The moment their eyes met, the state preceptor's body and mind trembled as if he was struck by lightning. Fake god. How could it be? There was actually another fake god. Is it worth it for you to do this for a mere Qin Feiyong? He pushed Yiglao back with a palm strike and was extremely shocked and angry. Whether it is worth it or not, we know it in our hearts. You don't need to know. Yiglao said expressionlessly. Once again, he carried a monstrous aura and pressed down on the state preceptor. The state preceptor was obviously beginning to feel a little powerless. It was not because he was weak, but because he was afraid. Facing 2 fake gods, he couldn't handle it alone. He never expected that 2 fake gods would come to save Qin Feiyong. If he knew this would happen, he would have directly killed Qin Feiyong in the divine prison even if he risked disobeying the emperor. Unfortunately, it was all too late. At the same time, in the square below, Mu Qing pointed to the commander of the Kirin army and asked, "Do you want to kill him?" Qin Feiyong said lightly, "Do I need your help to kill him?" Mu Qing pursed his lips into a wry smile. This was really asking for trouble. Qin Feiyong looked at the commander of the Kirin army and said, "Is the Hao Tian Palace still in its original position?" "Yes." The commander of the Kirin army nodded. "Humph." Qin Feiyong snorted from his nose, threw away the halberd in his hand, and waved his hand to open a portal. "Where are you going?" The mysterious madam frowned. "There are still some things that need to be solved." Qin Feiyong's eyes flashed coldly, and he entered the portal without looking back. So troublesome. The mysterious madam was a little annoyed. Although they had two fake gods, this was the capital of the Great Qin Empire after all. Moreover, they knew nothing about the background of the Great Qin Empire. Who knew if there were other hidden powerhouses? So, it was better to leave as soon as possible. "Stop complaining, hurry up and follow," Mu Qing said with a frown. She was also a little angry and quickly rushed into the portal. The mysterious madam, the great ancestor, the second ancestor, and the middle-aged man looked at each other and could only helplessly follow. As for Yigleo, they were not worried. Because with the strength of the state preceptor, it was not enough to hurt Yigleo. Moreover, the distance between the first district and the imperial palace was not too far. If something really happened to Yigleo, they could come to support him immediately. Seeing this situation, the commander of the Kirin army immediately opened the portal and rushed to the Bright Sky Palace. After Qin Feiyong and the others left, the crowd around the square immediately became restless. Why did Qin Feiyong go to the Bright Sky Palace? Could it be that he was going to kill the little prince? The more they thought about it, the more they felt that it was possible. After all, Qin Feiyong killed the emperor's son in one fell swoop. And now, this little prince was not only named Qin Haotian, but the emperor also created a Bright Sky Palace for him. This would definitely anger Qin Feiyong. According to Qin Feiyong's usual style, he would never let it go. "Grandpa, what should we do?" Ren Wushuang looked at the old man anxiously. She knew Qin Feiyong's character too well. After going to the Bright Sky Palace, he would definitely do something outrageous. The Imperial Palace is not a place you and I can enter. It's useless to be anxious. Just wait for the news. The old man sighed. "I can bring you guys in." Lu Xingqian smiled faintly. With a wave of his hand, he disappeared with the old man and the others. "Are we going to the Imperial Palace?" In another private room, Ling Yu and the others looked at the white-haired old man and asked, "This old man will go alone. You all wait here." After saying that, the white-haired old man disappeared into thin air. "Second Grandpa, Uncle Black, what do we do now?" At the same time, Lu Zhang also looked at the old man in sackcloth and the burly man, not knowing what to do. The old man in sackcloth looked at Yigleo and the imperial tutor who were fighting in the clouds, and his old eyes flashed. "The situation here is settled, and we are no longer needed. Come back to the village with us first, take that artifact, and make a trip to the Forgotten Continent." Forgotten Continent? Lu Zhang was stunned and asked, "What is that place?" "It's a place that scares people, but also makes people yearn for it. You'll know when you get there." Chapter 922. Bright Heaven Palace. Everything was still the same as before. The woman in white knelt in front of the entrance of the garden, looking extremely haggard. The two maids had been persuading her in a low voice, but she was indifferent. The Kirin army guarding Bright Heaven Palace sighed inwardly. It was not easy for the Empress. At the same time, they had already noticed the battle between Yigleo and the imperial tutor. After all, the two were pseudo-gods and the battle fluctuations were so terrifying that it was hard not to notice. However, they did not know what happened in the first city district. After all, everything happened too quickly and the news had not reached here yet. The woman in white knew that the person fighting with the imperial tutor was Yigleo, because she had seen Yigleo in the divine prison. However, in her opinion, Yigleo alone could not save Qin Feiyong. The key was still to change the emperor's mind. Therefore, she did not leave. Swoosh! Suddenly, above Bright Heaven Palace, The void distorted and 5 figures descended one after another. It was Qin Feiyang's group of 5. Who is it? The people guarding Bright Heaven Palace detected the appearance of the 5 people right away and raised their heads to look over. 14th Prince. Immediately, everyone's expression changed. Empress, look, His Highness is here. The 2 maids also exclaimed in surprise. Tian'er? The woman in white looked up at Qin Feiyang, her eyes suddenly filled with tears. Mother. At the same time, looking at the haggard woman in white kneeling on the ground, Qin Feiyang's heart ached. A monstrous anger emerged in his heart. He turned to look at the middle-aged man from the endless ocean and bowed. Senior, I have a request. He was unfamiliar with this middle-aged man, but since he came with Mu Qing and the others, he must be here to help him. Although the middle-aged man hid his cultivation, the sense of crisis he brought was no less than Yuegleo and the imperial tutor. This was enough to prove that the middle-aged man was also a pseudo-god. I was entrusted by her to help you. As long as she agrees, I can do anything for you. The middle-aged man pointed at the mysterious madam and said coldly. Qin Feiyang looked at the mysterious madam gratefully and transmitted his voice. I want you to help Yuegleo capture the imperial advisor. Capture him? The middle-aged man frowned and said, if I join forces with Yuegleo, it won't be difficult to capture him, but here. Junior understands Senior's concerns. I'm afraid that there are other experts hiding in the imperial palace. However, Senior can rest assured. As long as you can capture the imperial preceptor, even if there are other false gods hiding here, they will have no choice but to hold back. Because the state preceptor is not only the state preceptor, but also the teacher of the emperor. The emperor will not watch him die, Qin Feiyang said coldly. He also wanted to use the state preceptor to force the emperor to sign an unequal contract. Of course, if he had the chance to kill the imperial tutor, he wouldn't show any mercy. I see. Realization dawned upon them. No wonder the state preceptor had so much authority in the great Qin Empire. Even the emperor couldn't control him. So it was because of this relationship. The mysterious madam looked at the middle-aged man and said with a smile, Go, we will take care of things here. If it really doesn't work, we can also hide in the castle temporarily. All right. I will end this quickly. The middle-aged man nodded, opened a portal, and quickly left. When the portal dissipated, Qin Feiyang glanced at the bright sky palace not far away and took a step forward, landing beside his mother. Greetings, Your Highness. The 2 maids quickly knelt on the ground and bowed. Thank you for taking care of my mother. Qin Feiyang looked at the 2 girls gratefully. He still had some impression of these 2 maids. They were his mother's people. Until now, they had not left his mother, which showed that they were loyal to his mother. This is what we should do, the 2 maids said with fear. Although they were not unfamiliar with Qin Feiyang, it was only when he was young. When he was young, Qin Feiyang gave people a warm feeling. But now, Qin Feiyang gave people a kind of fear that came from the bottom of their hearts. Qin Feiyang smiled faintly and turned to look at his mother. His eyes were full of self-blame. Mother, I'm sorry. I made you worry about your son again. He knelt on the ground, his heart was like a knife being twisted, and his face was full of pain. Tian'er, the white-clothed woman reached out and touched Qin Feiyang's face and said with a smile, As long as you are fine, it doesn't matter what your mother does. Qin Feiyang couldn't help but clench his hands. If his mother scolded him a few times, he would feel better. But the more his mother was like this, the more uncomfortable he felt, and his hatred for the emperor grew stronger. At this time, the commander of the Kirin army also arrived. Looking at Qin Feiyang, this pitiful mother and son, he also felt sad. Qin Feiyang suppressed his hatred for the emperor and said with a smile, Mother, your son is fine, quickly get up. With his help, the white-clothed woman finally stood up, but after kneeling for an entire morning, her legs were numb. Come and support the empress. Qin Feiyang looked at the 2 maids and said, Yes. The 2 maids hurriedly went up and supported the white-clothed woman on both sides. Tian'er, don't act recklessly. The white-clothed woman grabbed Qin Feiyang's hand and shook her head. Qin Feiyang said with a smile, Don't worry, mother, your son won't act recklessly. At the same time, he gently pushed away the white-clothed woman's hand and turned to look at the Kirin army. He saw that the Kirin army guarding Hao Tian Palace were all vigilant. Swish! Suddenly, Qin Feiyong rushed into the sky and looked down at Hao Tian Palace, a cold light surging in his eyes. I said last time, there is no need for this place to exist, be destroyed. He raised his arm and pointed in the air with his index finger. Returning to ruins. A terrifying invisible force, like a torrent of beasts, roared towards Hao Tian Palace. Presumptuous. Don't mess around. A group of Kirin army roared and rushed towards Qin Feiyong with an amazing saint aura. The presumptuous ones are you. The Mu clan's second forefather smiled coldly. The emperor's aura was like a waterfall, sweeping in all directions. Stop. Seeing this, the commander of the Kirin army shouted angrily, looking very anxious. But the Mu clan's second forefather turned a deaf ear, his eyes full of cruelty. Ah! A series of screams resounded through the sky. There was no suspense. The Kirin army, under the pressure of the Mu clan's second forefather, had no power to resist. Their bodies were crushed alive by the Mu clan's second forefather's pressure one after another. Blood was like a waterfall, reflecting the sky. Looking at this scene, the commander of the Kirin army was filled with grief and indignation, but his heart was full of powerlessness. The people who came to rescue Qin Feiyong this time were too strong. As the commander of the Kirin army, he was not useful at all. In the blink of an eye, that formless force also blasted into Bright Heaven Palace. But also at this moment, a mighty emperor's aura emerged from Hao Tian Palace and instantly disintegrated the invisible force. The invisible force was Qin Feiyong's battle art, the returning to ruins art. Therefore, the disintegration of the invisible force also caused a certain amount of damage to him. Puff! He spat out a mouthful of blood, but his eyes became colder. Swish! The next moment, the emperor appeared outside Hao Tian Palace, standing in the air with Qin Feiyong. He wore a dragon robe and his face was cold. The emperor's aura enveloped all directions. He was like the ruler of heaven and earth descending, bringing a sense of oppression that was stronger than the state preceptor. The emperor looked at Qin Feiyong and said expressionlessly, "Remember last time, we also stood opposite each other in this hostile relationship. What? Do you want to fight again? I could defeat you last time, and I can do the same this time." Qin Feiyong sneered, his expression incomparably fierce. Defeat the emperor? The mysterious lady, the Mu family's great ancestor, and the second ancestor looked at each other. Back then they indeed fought here. However, the emperor suppressed his cultivation. Even so, Qin Feiyong was the victor. Mu Qing whispered. Amazing. The three of them were secretly speechless. At the same time, the emperor glanced at Mu Qing and the other three, then looked at Qin Feiyong and said, "No matter what, this is our family matter. Isn't it a little inappropriate for you to let outsiders get involved?" Family. Qin Feiyong shook his head and laughed. Did he have a family? No. He had long despaired of this place, leaving only disgust. Are you admitting defeat now? Back then, when you crippled my cultivation and expelled me from the imperial capital, did you ever think that there would be such a day? Qin Feiyong teased. The emperor was silent. Sigh. Qin Feiyong shook his head and sighed. Things have come to this, and you still won't tell me the reason? If you want me to die, shouldn't you at least let me know the reason? Sometimes it's better to be confused. You're just too smart. The emperor finally spoke, but he said something that Qin Feiyong couldn't understand at all. Confused? Sorry, I'm not born to pretend to be confused. What about the little prince? Won't you let me see him? I really want to know how extraordinary he is to be able to replace me. Qin Feiyong said, his face full of curiosity. The emperor frowned and shook his head. I won't let you see him. That's not up to you. Qin Feiyong's eyes were cold as he looked down at the mysterious lady, the Mu family's great ancestor, and cupped his hands. I'll have to trouble the three of you to help me destroy this Hao Tian Palace. This. The three of them were a little hesitant. This time, they only came to save Qin Feiyong. They really didn't want to care about other things. Moreover, looking at the current emperor, they had a faint ominous premonition in their hearts. Because the emperor was too calm. However, Qin Feiyong was determined to destroy this Hao Tian Palace today. Seeing that the three of them were motionless, his eyes narrowed slightly, and a mighty dragon's might rushed out of his body. Roar! Accompanied by a loud dragon roar, the purple gold dragon soul appeared out of thin air. Qin Feiyong jumped up and landed on the head of the purple gold dragon soul. He looked down at the emperor and shouted, "Do you see that? This is the dragon soul that an emperor should have. What's that mere golden dragon soul of yours?" At that moment, the purple gold dragon soul roared and swooped down at the emperor with Qin Feiyong. The dragon's might was mighty and intimidating in all directions. "Tian, stop it. He's your biological father after all." Seeing this, the woman in white cried out anxiously, "Mother, this is between me and him. Don't interfere." Chapter 923. He was also forcing the mysterious lady, the Mu clan's great ancestor, and the second ancestor to make a move. Because, whether it was him and the mysterious lady, or him and the Mu clan, they were all using each other. Since that was the case, why didn't he take advantage of the opportunity? "Bastard, you really know how to find trouble." Seeing this, the mysterious lady cursed angrily and did not dare to hesitate any longer. Her aura erupted and rushed towards the emperor before Qin Feiyong could. The Mu clan's great ancestor and second ancestor looked at each other, gritted their teeth, and rushed towards the emperor like lightning. Since they were already here, they might as well go all out. If they could kill the emperor now, it would be over. The mysterious lady and the other two attacked with all their might, and the emperor did not dare to be careless. Because the aura they exuded was that of a 9-star combat emperor. Roar! Golden light surged behind the emperor, and a golden dragon soul soared into the sky. The dragon's aura rolled in all directions. You have to think carefully. If you fight with them here, the little prince may be killed by the fluctuations of your battle. Qin Feiyong pursed his lips with a hint of ridicule as he reminded the emperor. The emperor's gaze sank slightly, and he was obviously hesitating. The mysterious lady, the Mu clan's great ancestor, and the second ancestor seized the opportunity to attack together. Bang! 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 The emperor was blasted into the sky on the spot, and the three followed. Qin Feiyong looked up at the emperor, and then looked at the bright heaven palace again. "This time let's see who can stop me." Qin Feiyong smiled coldly and pointed his index finger in the air. Another invisible force pounced towards bright heavenly palace frenziedly. "I won't sit back and watch." Swish! However, at this moment, the commander of the Kirin army stood above the bright heaven palace with a trace of determination in his eyes. You can't stop me." Qin Feiyong shook his head, and with a slight thought, the commander of the Kirin army immediately held his head and howled. His body also lost its calm and fell towards the garden below. Boom! That invisible force finally blasted into the bright heaven palace. Accompanied by an earth-shaking loud noise, the bright heaven palace was instantly razed to the ground, and dust billowed. Amidst the dust, Qin Feiyong keenly sensed a saint aura. He raised his eyebrows and waved his hand. Immediately, a gust of wind blew. The dust was quickly blown away, revealing everything. Amidst the ruins, a woman with a dusty face was protecting a small child behind her. The woman was the current empress. However, at this moment, her phoenix coronet was crooked, her phoenix robe was torn, and her body was covered in dust. Although he didn't suffer any injuries, he seemed to be in a sorry state. She was now also staring at Qin Feiyong, her eyes full of resentment and hatred. As for the little child, he was hiding behind the current empress. His big, black eyes were staring at Qin Feiyong with fear. Whoosh! Qin Feiyong took a step forward and landed in front of Celestial Empress. He examined the little child and smiled. "This is my little brother? Go away." The current empress protected the little child with both hands, her face filled with panic. "Go away." Qin Feiyong looked at her and shook his head. "Compared to mother, you are really worse than a piece of trash. I really don't understand why the emperor made you his empress. Is he blind?" The current empress was not strong. In the past, he was still weak and could not see through her. But now, he could tell at a glance that this woman was just a 1-star battle saint. "Even if I'm not strong enough, I can still kill you." The current empress flew into a rage out of humiliation. Now, she was the empress of the great Qin Empire, the mother of the empire. How could she be offended by an abandoned little bastard? She took a step toward Qin Feiyong. Her arm shot out like an eagle's claw toward Qin Feiyong's head. "Really?" Qin Feiyong smiled disdainfully. The double-winged snow eagle appeared without warning, its eyes flashing with a terrifying ferocious light. Boom! The Saint Aura surged and rushed toward the current Empress. Ah! The current Empress let out a painful cry and was sent flying, blood gushing out. Whoosh! At the same time, Qin Feiyong also took a step forward and landed in front of the little prince with a bright smile on his face. Please don't hurt him. The current Empress' expression changed as she hurriedly pleaded. High up in the sky, the Emperor was also burning with anxiety. But he was trapped by the mysterious madam and the other two and could not escape at all. The white-robed woman also hurriedly said, Tian'er, you can't make any more mistakes. I'm not wrong. Qin Feiyong roared, scaring the little boy so much that he fell to the ground on his butt. The commander of the Kirin army also looked worried. Qin Feiyong did not really erase his soul. This was because although this person was working for the emperor, he would sometimes think for the emperor and his mother. He was also loyal and could be kept alive. But now, the commander of the Kirin army did not dare to step forward. This was because if Qin Feiyong wanted to kill the little prince now, he could do it with a wave of his hand, and the commander would not be able to stop him. And in the face of Qin Feiyong's roar, the white-robed woman's body could not help but tremble slightly, and then she fell silent. She understood that continuing to persuade Qin Feiyong would only backfire. Qin Feiyong took a deep breath and calmed down a little. He squatted on the ground, looked at the little boy, and asked with a smile, Your name is Qin Haotian? The little boy was terrified. Qin Feiyong smiled and said, Do you know? Actually, my name is also Qin Haotian. It was probably the smile on Qin Feiyong's face that infected the little boy, and the little boy was not as scared as before. He asked timidly, Really? His voice was very young, and his words were somewhat vague and difficult to understand. It was obvious that he had just learned to speak. Really? So the two of us are very fated. Qin Feiyong nodded and smiled, reaching out to pick up the little boy. Seeing this, the current empress, the emperor, the commander of the Kirin army, and Qin Feiyong's mother, all had their hearts in their throats. They were afraid that Qin Feiyong would kill the little prince on impulse. Big brother, what is fate? The little prince, who seemed to have completely put aside his fear, looked at Qin Feiyong curiously, and asked confusedly. After all, he was a child, and his mind was relatively simple. Seeing Qin Feiyong's amiable look, he was not afraid. It is fate that you and I met. It is also fate that we were born in the same place. Qin Feiyong said with a smile. The little prince said in surprise, Big brother was also born here? Yes. I used to live here like you. Qin Feiyong nodded. Are you also father's child? But why haven't I seen you before? The little prince asked innocently. Qin Feiyong glanced at the emperor, looked at the little boy, and nodded. Yes, we were born of the same father, but our fates were different. I was abandoned. Then you are my brother? The little prince asked. Brother. Qin Feiyong's body stiffened. The word brother seemed to have touched his heartstrings. Brother. Can you tell me why father abandoned you? It feels so complicated. The little prince said again. Yes. It's very complicated. You are still young, and you won't understand even if I tell you. Qin Feiyong sighed deeply, then rubbed the little prince's head, and said with a smile, I have a few words for you to tell father. Be good and don't move. Okay. The little prince nodded, with an innocent smile on his face. Qin Feiyong looked up at the emperor, and his eyes instantly became cold. He said, I don't ask for much, just tell me why you tried to kill me back then. The mysterious lady and the other two had stopped, but they surrounded the emperor. When the emperor heard this, he pondered for a moment, looked at Qin Feiyong, and said, What if I don't say it? Qin Feiyong said, For the current me other than my mother, there is no family to speak of. You should know what I will do. So, you plan to continue to harm your brother? Suddenly, a hoarse voice sounded. Swish. Immediately after, a white figure descended above Bright Sky Palace. It was an old man. Wearing a white robe, white hair and a white beard, he exuded an otherworldly aura. Qin Feiyong had seen this person before. It was the old man guarding the pagoda, Old Man Qin. Brother. Qin Feiyong looked at Old Man Qin, shook his head and said, Then I want to ask you, is the family of the emperor reliable? If it is, Then why did the first prince and the rest want me dead? Old Man Qin was speechless. Swish! After Old Man Qin, another figure descended out of thin air. There were the two black-robed old men guarding the divine prison. There were also the Kirin army and the Black Iron army in armor. There was also a group of people wearing the uniform of the divine temple. They were the law enforcers of the divine temple. The aura exuded by each of them was extremely terrifying. Especially those law enforcers, they were filled with an amazing murderous aura. Seeing these people appear, the mysterious lady Mujia's ancestor, and the second ancestor immediately fell in front of Qin Feiyong. Their eyes were full of vigilance. How is their strength? Qin Feiyong asked via voice transmission. The mysterious lady secretly said, they are all very strong, especially the old man who appeared first. He gave us a strong sense of crisis. He should be a false god. False god. Qin Feiyong's eyes trembled. The person the mysterious lady was referring to was Old Man Qin. He had guessed before that this Old Man Qin must be very strong, but he didn't expect him to be strong to this extent. It seems that he really knows nothing about the background of the great Qin Empire. He couldn't help but wonder if there were other false gods lurking in the imperial palace in addition to Old Man Qin and the state preceptor. Rumble. Kacha. On the top of the clouds, the battle between Yigleo and the middle-aged man with the state preceptor had reached its climax, and the battlefield of the three people was gradually approaching the imperial palace. Old Man Qin looked up at the sky. His eyes were incomparably deep. Swish. Suddenly, his eyes flashed with a cold light. He looked down at Qin Feiyong and said, hand over the little prince immediately and surrender. With just you? Qin Feiyong sneered. Young man, don't be too arrogant. The imperial capital is not a place where you can be presumptuous. Old Man Qin's body shook. A mighty aura emerged and shrouded Qin Feiyong and the others. It's really a false god. The mysterious lady's pupils shrank and anxiously said to Qin Feiyong, quickly go into the castle. Nah. Yigleo and the middle-aged man were fighting with the state preceptor and had no time to support. If they were controlled by Old Man Qin's aura, then they would be wiped out. However, Qin Feiyong didn't panic at all. He grinned and said, it seems that you really don't care about his life in that case. Chapter 924. No. The current empress hurriedly stood between Qin Feiyong and Elder Qin. She looked at Elder Qin and said, don't do anything. He will really hurt Tian'er. Don't worry, Empress. He won't dare to touch the little prince. Because as long as something happens to the little prince, he will lose his protective talisman. Elder Qin said. Qin Feiyong grinned and said, you're smart, but didn't you forget something? I still have an ancient castle. The ancient castle was his real protective talisman. Elder Qin raised his eyebrows and looked up at the emperor. He bowed and said, Your Majesty, how do you want to deal with it? The emperor looked at Qin Feiyong in silence. A moment later, he looked at the little prince again. After a long time, he looked at Qin Feiyong and said, although I like him very much, it doesn't mean that you can use him to threaten me. You can have another son if you lose him. Qin Feiyong's eyes trembled. How heartless must the emperor be to say such words? He didn't dare to doubt it. Because he was the best example. The emperor could abandon him, and he could also abandon the little prince now. The emperor said coldly, Tell me, what do you want? Qin Feiyong took a deep breath and said, I want you to promise me that you will never hurt my mother and everyone related to me. His mother didn't want to leave the imperial capital, so he had to make plans for her future. As for those related to him, there were even more. For example, Luo Chenxue, Mermaid Princess, Yan Nanshan, and so on. The emperor said in a deep voice, You are the first person who dares to negotiate with me. Then shouldn't I be honored? Qin Feiyong sneered. The emperor narrowed his eyes slightly and said, You have repeatedly offended my dignity. Do you think I will agree? At this moment, at the top of the clouds, a painful scream suddenly sounded. Everyone looked up. They saw that the battle between the state preceptor and Yigleo had shifted to the sky above the imperial palace. Under the joint attack of Yigleo, the imperial tutor was severely injured and in imminent danger. The emperor raised his eyebrows and ordered, Old Qin, go and help the imperial tutor. Yes. Old Man Qin bowed in response and soared into the sky. Hee. It's better for you to stay here. But suddenly, a faint laugh came from the vicinity of Bright Heaven Palace. Following closely, a white-haired old man wearing a mask soared into the sky and blocked Old Man Qin's path. It was the old man who had been with Ling Yu and the others not long ago. What? Another false god? Old Man Qin exclaimed as he looked at the masked old man. His face was filled with disbelief. Hearing old Qin's exclamation, everyone present turned pale with fright, including the emperor and Qin Feiyang. Qin Feiyang asked in surprise, Mu Qing, is she one of us? No. Mu Qing shook her head. No. Then who is he? Qin Feiyang looked at the masked old man. Suddenly, he noticed the masked old man's eyes and his gaze trembled slightly. The masked old man's eyes actually gave him an inexplicable sense of familiarity. But the masked old man's temperament made him feel very unfamiliar. What was going on? Had he seen him somewhere before? Qin Feiyang racked his brains to think. At the same time, the emperor looked at the masked old man and asked, Who are you? This old man is just a nosy person. You don't have to be too nervous. The masked old man laughed hoarsely. The emperor raised his eyebrows and said in a deep voice, I'm afraid you can't control the matters here. That's not necessarily true. The masked old man chuckled and looked up at the imperial tutor and Yiglao. Qin Feiyang and the others also looked up again. They saw that under the siege of Yiglao and Old Man Qin, the already seriously injured imperial tutor was now in a mess and in an extremely sorry state. The emperor retracted his gaze and looked at the masked old man. Are you stalling for time? The masked old man smiled faintly and did not deny it. As long as Old Man Qin was restrained, it was only a matter of time before Yiglao and the middle-aged man took down the imperial tutor. Old Man Qin suddenly turned and looked at the emperor and bowed. Your Majesty, please ask them to come out. Qin Feiyang and the others were stunned and immediately looked at the emperor and Old Man Qin in surprise. Who were they? Was there really another false god in this imperial palace? Looking at the emperor again. Hearing Old Man Qin's words, his face was uncertain and seemed to be hesitating about something. Tian, quickly take your people and leave the imperial capital. It was also at this moment. The white-clothed woman transmitted her voice to Qin Feiyang, and her tone seemed to be extremely anxious. Mother, what's going on? Who made you so afraid? Qin Feiyang secretly said. Don't ask any more, let's go. The white-clothed woman urged. Actually, you don't have to worry. The masked old man glanced at Qin Feiyang and the others and suddenly laughed. What do you mean? Qin Feiyang and the others looked at him again. There are indeed a few false gods hidden in the imperial palace, but they won't make a move easily. Because their lifespan is coming to an end, they have all entered a state of self-sealing. The masked old man said. The emperor looked at him in shock and anger and said, How do you know so clearly? Who are you? The masked old man laughed and said, Didn't this old man already say just now? This old man is just a busybody. Self-sealing. Qin Feiyang's eyes flashed. Of course, he also knew about the so-called self-sealing. When he and Lu Xingchen entered the canyon below the ruins to look for Ran Duxing, the holy monkey they encountered was in a state of self-sealing. And there were only two possibilities for people who sealed themselves. The first was that they were seriously injured and in danger, hiding from the pursuit of strong enemies. Entering a state of self-sealing, their aura would completely disappear. Even through a piece of paper, it would be impossible to detect. It was a very good escape method. Of course, this was also a double-edged sword. If they were discovered, they would only have a dead end, because after self-sealing, they would have no fighting power. The second was that they were nearing the end of their lifespan. Some old antiques who were nearing the end of their lifespan would choose to seal themselves because they didn't want to die. In this way, the life force in their body would stop flowing away. In other words, they would always maintain the state before they were sealed, waiting for the future generations to find a way to extend their lives. However, they must not let their guard down because of this. Because these people who sealed themselves were not really nearing the end of their lifespan. They were just nearing the end of their lifespan. Although there was only a word difference between nearing the end of one's lifespan and reaching the end of one's lifespan, the meaning was as different as heaven and earth. Nearing the end of one's lifespan, they would die soon. Nearing the end of one's lifespan, they would die soon, but there was still a period of time to live. These people who were nearing the end of their lifespan, as long as they were not sealed for too long, could still display their peak fighting power after the seal was removed. The reason why they said this was because if they sealed themselves for too long, their cultivation would also drop bit by bit with the passage of time. Your Majesty, this matter has already involved the fate and safety of our great Qin Empire. We can't hesitate any longer. Old Qin spoke again. No. The emperor decisively waved his hand, looked at Qin Feiyong and shouted, "Take your people and get out of here. If you don't agree to my conditions, I won't leave." Qin Feiyong shook his head. The safety of his mother was more important than anything else. You are really stubborn. Although I don't want to alarm them, if it really comes to that point, I will not hesitate to ask them to come out of seclusion. The emperor's eyes were cold, a golden light flashed in front of him, and a golden bell appeared. Now, as long as I ring this golden bell, someone will immediately use blood to remove the seal for them. At that time, you won't be able to escape even if you have wings. The emperor said in a deep voice. Qin Feiyong's pupils shrank. From the emperor's tone, it was not difficult to tell that those fake gods who sealed themselves had not been sealed for long. This also meant that those fake gods could exert their peak combat strength. If the seal was really removed, with the help of the two fake gods, the state preceptor and old Qin, then he and Mu Qing were really doomed today. Hurry up! Qin Feiyong looked up at Yiglao and the middle-aged man. Now he could only rely on these two people. As long as he could take down the state preceptor before the emperor rang the golden bell, even if those fake gods came out, they would not dare to do anything to him. The battle in the sky was getting more and more intense. The state preceptor situation was getting worse and worse. Below. Old Qin was impatient. Why do we have to go to this step? The emperor looked at Qin Feiyong, shook his head and sighed, then raised his arm and smashed the golden bell with force. Clang! The golden bell shook violently in the void, releasing an earth-shattering sound that reverberated throughout the entire imperial palace. Mu Qing's face suddenly changed and said angrily, "Qin Feiyong, if we don't leave now, we will all die here." The mysterious lady, the Mu family's ancestor, and the second ancestor were also anxious. Qin Feiyong's face was also gloomy, but he did not speak for a long time, but his heart was crazily shouting, "Quick, quick, quick." The state preceptor was already at the end of the road. As long as Yiglao and the middle-aged man worked harder, they would be able to take him down. Damn it! Seeing this, Mu Qing could not help but curse, looked up at Yiglao, and shouted, "Old ancestor, quickly open the space-time door." It's too late to leave now. Old Qin sneered, and his divine power rolled, sealing this world. Time passed by breath. About 10 breaths passed. Boom! At the back mountain of the imperial palace, a terrifying aura suddenly emerged. It was all divine power. Without a doubt. The seals on the fake gods that had sealed themselves had already been lifted. 1, 2, 3. At the same time. The mysterious lady closed her eyes and carefully sensed the divine power. All of a sudden, she opened her eyes and said in shock, "There are 3 divine powers." Mu Qing, the Mu family's ancestor, and the second ancestor's face instantly turned pale. 3 divine powers were equivalent to 3 fake gods. How could this be played? Qin Feiyong's heart also sank to the bottom. Alas! It seems that this old man still has to make a move. At this time, with a helpless sigh, the masked old man disappeared without a trace. The next moment, he appeared behind the emperor. However, he did not use any weapons, held the emperor hostage, and just stood behind the emperor. But even so, it was enough to make anyone's face change color. Because the emperor's cultivation was not yet at the fake god level. If the masked old man wanted to kill him now, it would be too easy. "How dare you!" Old Qin immediately roared, and his eyes flashed with shocking killing intent. A group of Black Iron Army and Kirin Army also stared at the masked old man with murderous intent. And Qin Feiyong and the others were also shocked. This masked old man's courage was too big, right? Kidnapping the emperor, this was going against the entire great Qin Empire. However, for them this was a turning point. Now that the emperor was controlled by the masked old man, these people would definitely not dare to act recklessly. Chapter 925. Boom. Just as Qin Feiyong and the others were puzzled, there was a turn for the better in the sky. Accompanied by a deafening loud noise, Yiglao and the middle-aged man finally took down the imperial preceptor. Qin Feiyang and the others were naturally overjoyed with this result. The little prince, the emperor, and the imperial preceptor fell into their hands one after another. Their chips were undoubtedly bigger. However, the faces of old man Qin and the others were extremely gloomy. Your strength is not bad. In the sky, Yiglao held the dying imperial preceptor and looked at the middle-aged man with a smile. You can do it too, the middle-aged man said. Immediately, the two of them looked at each other and smiled. Carrying the imperial preceptor, they swooped down like lightning and landed beside Qin Feiyang and the others. Thank you, seniors. Qin Feiyang quickly bowed and thanked them. Yiglao casually threw the imperial preceptor in front of Qin Feiyang and said, Hurry up and finish him. Okay. Qin Feiyang nodded and looked down at the imperial preceptor. The imperial preceptor's clothes were ragged and his body was covered with wounds. Like a dead dog, he lay on the ground motionless. But even so, Qin Feiyang did not dare to get close to the imperial preceptor. Don't worry. His chi has been shattered by us. He can't make any big waves now. The middle-aged man said. Qin Feiyang heard and secretly breathed a sigh of relief. He took a step forward and stepped on the imperial preceptor's chest. He sneered and said, You didn't expect to be stepped on by me so soon. If it wasn't for their help, what are you? The imperial preceptor roared hysterically, his old eyes full of resentment and disdain. Yes. If it wasn't for them today, the one being stepped on would definitely be me. But in the near future, I will definitely kill you myself. Qin Feiyang's eyes flashed with killing intent as he kicked the imperial preceptor's head with all his strength. Ah! The imperial preceptor immediately screamed and saw stars. He was furious. However, compared to anger, his pride was more unbearable. Who was he? He was the imperial preceptor and a false god. When had he ever suffered such humiliation? However, Qin Feiyang ignored him. He looked up at the emperor and said calmly, Can you agree to my conditions now? The emperor glanced at the masked old man behind him and was about to speak. Whoosh! But at this moment, 3 figures descended in the sky above Bright Heaven Palace, accompanied by terrifying divine might. Everyone looked over. The 3 of them were shrouded in a layer of black fog, making it impossible to see their faces. They were emitting a cold murderous aura, as if 3 death gods had descended. Obviously, they were the 3 fake gods who had sealed themselves. What happened? One of them asked, his voice sounding old and hoarse. Old man Qin immediately stepped forward and explained. Immediately. The 3 of them fell silent. They never thought that things would be so complicated. The emperor glanced at the 3 of them, then looked at Qin Feiyang and said, The condition you proposed is an unfair contract. Equal. Qin Feiyang seemed to have heard the funniest joke in the world as he mocked. I also want equal treatment, but have you ever given it to me? The emperor was silent. Qin Feiyang said, At the end of the day, it's all because of you that things have developed to this point. Don't blame me, you have no right to blame me. He's your father. Old man Qin said angrily. Qin Feiyang was so angry that he laughed and shouted, What a joke as a father, would you treat your own son like this? Even if he's wrong, you shouldn't take revenge on him like this. Because your life, talent, bloodline, they were all given to you by him. Without these, you wouldn't exist in this world at all. Old man Qin shouted. The emperor said coldly, That's right, if you have the ability, then return everything to me. Life, talent, bloodline, Qin Feiyang muttered. Ha ha. Suddenly, he laughed out loud as if he had gone mad. His face was full of self-mockery. Although in the past, he had always said that he had completely given up on the imperial palace, the emperor and everything else. But in fact, in the depths of his heart, there was still a trace of attachment and desire. After all, blood was thicker than water, and it wasn't something that could be cut off just like that. However, he never thought that the emperor would be so heartless as to ask him to return everything to him. How? Life, talent, bloodline, they were all innate. Asking him to return these was simply asking him to hand over his life. Did he want him to die that much? At this moment, the woman in white also looked at the emperor in disbelief. She really didn't expect that the emperor would say such words to his own son. Wasn't this clearly forcing Feiyong to death? Too much, this is really too much. If I had such a father, I would have already collapsed. Mu Qing shook her head. As a father, in front of his child, he said such cruel words. And in front of everyone. This could no longer be described as heartless. It was simply heartless and inhumane. At this moment, he couldn't help but begin to sympathize with Qin Feiyong. The mysterious lady, the great ancestor and the second ancestor of the Mu clan were also full of anger, feeling unworthy for Qin Feiyong. Although they and Qin Feiyong were both using each other, no one would be able to tolerate the emperor's attitude towards Qin Feiyong. Why do you still say these words? Don't you think Feiyong has been hurt enough? The woman in white looked at the emperor and asked softly. Her eyes were filled with tears and full of pain. I have 3,000 concubines. As long as I want, there are many children. I don't need him at all. The emperor said indifferently. You bastard! The woman in white roared. Mother! At the same time, Qin Feiyong's angry roar sounded. He clenched his hands, glanced at the emperor, and turned to look at the woman in white. His eyes softened, and he said with a smile, Mother, don't say any more. It's meaningless. Yes. What's the point of saying this now? Tian, it's Mother who let you be born in this world. But Mother couldn't protect you well, and let you suffer from torture and suffering since you were a child. Tian, Mother is sorry. The woman in white closed her eyes in despair. Her pale face was full of self-blame. No. Qin Feiyong shook his head, smiled and rubbed the little prince's head, and said, Go back to your mother's side. After that, he put the little prince on the ground. No one expected that Qin Feiyong would let the little prince go like this, including the emperor and the current empress. Son, come here. When she came back to her senses, the current empress immediately waved to the little prince. Her face was full of urgency. Qin Feiyong ignored her and turned to the woman in white. However, the little prince didn't run to his mother. He looked around for a while, and finally looked at Qin Feiyong's back, and then looked at the emperor, and asked in a childish voice, Father, what did you do to brother? Why is brother so sad now? He was still young and didn't know what life was, let alone talent and bloodline. But he could see that this strange brother was very sad now. So, he asked without hesitation. But in the face of a child's question, no one present answered for a moment. Because they didn't know how to answer. The emperor was even more at a loss. Qin Feiyong's body also stiffened. He turned around and walked in front of the little prince. He lowered his head and looked at the little guy. Brother. The little prince looked at him innocently. Qin Feiyong squatted down, reached out and gently grabbed the little prince's shoulder, and said with a smile, Remember my words. If you want to survive in the imperial palace, you have to be wary of everyone, including your father. The fact that he said this proved that he approved of this little brother. Why? The little prince asked suspiciously. You'll understand when you grow up. Qin Feiyong rubbed the little prince's forehead, got up and walked to the woman in white without looking back. The current empress also rushed up, held the little prince, and hid behind Elder Qin and the others. When Qin Feiyong walked to the woman in white raised her hand, stroked Qin Feiyong's face, and murmured with tears in her eyes, Tanner, it's all my fault. Can you forgive me? Looking at his mother, Qin Feiyong couldn't help but feel a dull pain in his heart. The anger in his heart also became more and more vigorous. He reached out, held his mother in his arms, and comforted her. Mother, it's not your fault. You don't have to apologize to me. I'm the one who should apologize. Tiana. The woman in white was sobbing. You carried me for 10 months before giving birth to me. And you worked so hard to raise me. But all these years I haven't been filial to you for a day. Mother, I feel guilty in my heart. Qin Feiyong said in a low voice, and the tears in his eyes fell uncontrollably. Don't say that, the woman in white hurriedly said. Mother, let me finish. Now in this world, other than you and Uncle Yuan, I have no other relatives. And now, Uncle Yuan is nowhere to be found. You're the only one left. So no matter what happens, I'll always protect you. Because you're the only one who can make me abandon everything to protect you. Even if it costs me my life, I won't regret it. Mother. No matter what I become in the future, don't feel strange. Because you'll always be my mother. You'll always be the person I care about the most. Because you're the one who gave me life. Qin Feiyang said in a low voice. Tian, what do you want to do? Hearing this, the woman in white got up and looked at Qin Feiyang's face, and there was a strong sense of uneasiness in her heart. The double-winged snow eagle, Mu Qing, and the others also stared at Qin Feiyang in shock and doubt. That was because Qin Feiyang's words truly resembled the last words of a dying man. Qin Feiyang did not answer. With a plop, he knelt in front of the woman in white and kowtowed 3 times and 9 times. Tian, tell mother quickly. You won't do anything stupid, right? The woman in white panicked. Now that Qin Feiyang's behavior was too abnormal, the sense of uneasiness in her heart was getting stronger. She held Qin Feiyang's arm tightly, fearing that if she let go, Qin Feiyang would disappear from her sight. Qin Feiyang still kept silent. But there was a flash of determination in his eyes. He gently pushed his mother away, and then stood up suddenly. He turned and looked up at the emperor and said word by word, My life was given by mother. You have no right to take it away. As for talent and bloodline... Bang! Speaking of this, Qin Feiyang's body shook violently, and a destructive wave spread out from his body. He roared, Now I'll return these things to you. Explode. In an instant, all the blood vessels in his body were torn by the battle chi. His skin cracked inch by inch. Blood gushed out and instantly dyed his whole body red. Tianer. The woman in white's face suddenly changed. She hurriedly grabbed Qin Feiyang's hand and cried anxiously, Stop, you'll die. Mother. Please forgive me. I really don't want to have anything to do with him anymore. Qin Feiyang smiled apologetically. There was a trace of persistence in his gentle eyes, and he let the blood flow. Silly child, mother begs you, don't do anything stupid, okay? The woman in white shook her head and cried sadly. At the same time, Mu Qing, the mysterious madam, Yiglao, the emperor, Elder Qin, and so on. Everyone present looked at Qin Feiyang in horror. They did not expect that Qin Feiyang would destroy the power of his bloodline. One had to know. Once the bloodline was destroyed, Qin Feiyang would not only lose his previous talent, but also the foundation he had laid before would collapse, and he would even bleed to death. Chapter 926. Heaven and earth were silent, and the gods were silent. For example, Yiglao, the middle-aged man, Old Qin, and the 3 fake gods who appeared later looked at Qin Feiyang with extremely complicated emotions in their eyes. Crippling his own bloodline power, such an extremely terrifying act, if it were them, they wouldn't dare to do it. Although they were all fake gods who dominated a region. Although they and Qin Feiyang were basically enemies, Qin Feiyang's behavior at this moment made them unable to help but feel a sense of admiration. Without a little bit of perseverance, it was absolutely impossible to do such a thing. Feiyang. Somewhere in the void, Ren Wushuang, the old man, and the others stood in Lu Xingchen's space artifact, looking at Qin Feiyang outside. Their expressions were full of worry and pain. At the same time, their hearts were filled with indignation. Why did the emperor treat Qin Feiyang like this? Could it be that Qin Feiyang was not his biological son? This was also cruel and unfair to him. If the emperor was willing to show half of the care and concern for Qin Feiyang wouldn't have come to this point today. Even Lu Xingchen felt deeply unworthy for Qin Feiyang. Wasn't it just because of one sentence? Was it necessary to do such a stupid thing? He didn't know how to evaluate Qin Feiyang now. Was it stupid? Or was it courage? No. It was definitely stupid. And it was hopelessly stupid. Because such an act would only cause pain to those close to him and delight his enemies. Why was he so stupid? Why? For example, Qin Feiyang's mother at this moment was like a desperate old woman, constantly crying out in grief, her face full of sadness. Woo-woo. Even the heavens seemed to be moved by her. Above the imperial capital, a gust of wind gradually blew. Dark clouds surged from the distance. The sky that was originally shining with the sun gradually fell into darkness. Crack. Crash. Not long after. In the sky, lightning flashed and thunder rumbled, and the wind howled. The rain poured down in torrents. What's going on? Why is it raining all of a sudden? People in the imperial capital looked at the sky in puzzlement. What a strong sense of sadness. That sadness came from the imperial palace. What happened there? Ling Yu and the other three stood in front of the window, looking in the direction of the imperial palace. Their brows were full of confusion. In another restaurant, Zhuge Mingyang was also standing in front of the window, looking at the torrential rain outside, for a long time without a word. Suddenly, he opened a portal and appeared in the sky above the palace. What's going on? Looking at Qin Feiyong's current appearance, his eyes were filled with bewilderment. The commander of the Qilin army sighed. He crippled his own bloodline power. Zhuge Mingyang was dumbstruck. But now, he had actually crippled the power of the bloodline? Was he crazy? Zhuge Mingyang glared at Qin Feiyong and shouted, "Do you think you can get everyone's sympathy by doing this?" "I don't want to get anyone's sympathy. I just don't want to owe him," Qin Feiyong said lightly. "Don't want to owe him?" Zhuge Mingyang was stunned. He turned to look at the emperor and immediately understood. "You are no longer worthy to be my opponent, Zhuge Mingyang." He shook his head, turned around, and retreated to the side in silence. "Is that so?" Qin Feiyong muttered. Blood was still flowing. His face was getting paler and paler. The merged fire of life was frantically repairing his blood vessels. But every time it was repaired, his blood vessels would rupture again. Time passed breath by breath. There was not much blood left in his body. The ground under his feet was dyed red with blood. He raised his head and looked coldly at the emperor. The heavy rain poured on his body, making him a little cold. But looking at the emperor's indifferent face, his heart was even colder. "Is this the ending you want?" The masked old man standing behind the emperor looked at Qin Feiyong, whose breath was getting weaker and weaker, and asked in a low voice. But the person he asked was not Qin Feiyong, but the emperor. But the emperor did not answer. Although Feiyong hated you before, in fact, deep in his heart, he still longed for the love and care of you as a father. And now, he has truly given up on you. He has completely given up on you. The masked old man shook his head and sighed. The emperor frowned and asked without looking back, "Who are you? Why do you know him so well?" "Me." The masked old man pondered for a moment and said lightly, "You will know in the future." After that, he lowered his head to look at Qin Feiyong again, his old eyes filled with love. Plop. No one knew how long it had been. Qin Feiyong lost his balance and fell into the mud. Feiyong. The white-clothed woman's body and mind trembled. She quickly squatted down and helped Qin Feiyong to sit on the ground. His body and face were covered in mud, but it couldn't hide his weakness. "Mother, I'm sorry." He looked at the white-clothed woman and smiled apologetically. His voice became hoarse, pale, and weak. "I'm the one who should be sorry." The white-clothed woman hugged Qin Feiyong, crying bitterly. "Mother, if there is an afterlife, I still want to be your child again," Qin Feiyong muttered. He could clearly feel that his life force was rapidly dissipating. He couldn't even muster the strength to speak. But at this moment, his heart was especially warm and peaceful. "Good, good, good." The white-clothed woman nodded repeatedly, tears gushing out like a spring. "Thank you, mother." The rain hit Qin Feiyong's face, washing away the mud on his face, revealing a pale face. But there was a bright smile on that face. There was no more blood on his body. Because the blood in his body had already flowed out. His consciousness was being swallowed by darkness. His cultivation was also falling step by step. 8-star war sect, 7-star war sect, 6-star war sect. Tianhe, you can't die. Mother can't live without you. I beg you, don't leave mother behind, okay? The white-clothed woman pleaded. She looked as if she had aged dozens of years and was filled with helplessness. "Mother, I can't bear to part with you either. But now your child's heart is really calm. Because from now on, I don't owe him anything anymore," Qin Feiyong muttered, and after saying the last word, he slowly closed his eyes. The fluctuations of life had also completely disappeared. "No, no, no, no. Wake up, Tian." The white-clothed woman shook Qin Feiyong with all her might, as if she had gone crazy. However, Qin Feiyong didn't show any signs of waking up. Why do you treat my child like this? Heavens, I beg you, please save this poor child of mine." She sat paralyzed in the mud, hugging Qin Feiyong tightly in her arms. She looked at the hazy sky and screamed in despair. Boom! Crack! Thunder resounded for thousands of miles. Lightning illuminated the sky. The rain mercilessly slapped the white-clothed woman's face, making her look especially lonely and desolate. Could it be that a peerless monster of a generation has fallen just like that? Mu Qing muttered. He only had hatred for Qin Feiyang. However, looking at Qin Feiyang lying in the arms of the white-clothed woman, there was an unresolvable sadness and a trace of regret in his heart. Perhaps this time, allowing Qin Feiyang to return to the great Qin Empire was a mistake. Qin Feiyang is already dead. There's no point in us staying here. Quickly go and get the Sky Profound Flame, Cold Ice Flame, and Heavenly Thunder Flame. Let's leave. Yiglao said to Mu Qing and took out the space-time gate. Today, none of you will leave. Seeing this, Old Man Qin's eyes flashed with a shocking murderous intent. Is that so? The Mu family's great ancestor sneered and stepped forward. He picked up the dying Grandmaster and said, "Whoever dares to stop us, I'll kill him." Old Man Qin frowned and turned to look at the three false gods behind him. However, the three of them did not make any statements. The black fog shrouded their figures, and their expressions could not be seen clearly. Sigh. Mu Qing sighed deeply and strode in front of the white-clothed woman. He bowed and said, "Auntie," but before he could say anything the white-clothed woman scolded, "Go away, don't disturb my child." Mu Qing raised his eyebrows and said, "Auntie, I must take the three flames with me." Without the Sky Profound Flame, Heavenly Thunder Flame, and Cold Ice Flame, he could not summon the miracle. Then the Mu family's efforts over the years would be wasted. The white-clothed woman did not pay any more attention to Mu Qing. However, the emperor said coldly, "He was a member of the Great Qin Empire when he was alive, and he will be a ghost of the Great Qin Empire when he dies. Don't even think about taking away a single one of his things. A member of the Great Qin Empire. Don't you think it's funny? Why didn't you say that before he died? I really feel sorry for Qin Feiyang to have a father like you." Mu Qing was so angry that he laughed. The emperor said expressionlessly, "This is between father and son. You have no right to ask." Haha, father and son? Don't you feel ashamed when you say those two words? I really admire your shameless character more and more now. Mu Qing shook his head and did not hide his sarcasm. Shut up, all of you. However, at this moment, the masked old man shouted. His tone was no longer as indifferent as before, and there was a piercing chill in it. Everyone present looked at him. The masked old man said, "You have no right to take Feiyang's things." The emperor said in a deep voice, "I said that you can't interfere with the matters here." The masked old man's eyes turned cold. In an instant, he disappeared behind the emperor and appeared in front of him. Slap. Then he actually slapped the emperor in the face in front of everyone. What? Everyone was petrified on the spot. Dumbfounded. One had to know. The emperor was the supreme ruler. Even these fake gods of the Great Qin Empire had to be respectful to him. But this masked old man actually slapped the emperor in public. Who exactly was he? The emperor was also stunned. He never thought that in this world, there would be someone who dared to hit him. This slap is not for anything else, but to remind you. As the descendant of the Qin emperor, you must rule the country with benevolence and justice. You must have a heart that embraces all things and accept every subject of the Great Qin Empire. The masked old man said coldly. Chapter 927. Tyrannical Hegemony? The emperor suddenly became angry and shouted, "Who do you think you are? What right do you have to teach me a lesson?" The masked old man sighed deeply, his old eyes full of disappointment. Whoosh! He stepped in front of the white-clothed woman, looked at Qin Feiyang, and bowed. "My lord, this old man will take you away." "My lord." Everyone present was once again deeply shocked. This terrifying old man actually called Qin Feiyang's mother my lord? Didn't this mean that this man was Qin Feiyang's mother's subordinate? The white-clothed woman looked up at the masked old man and said, "It's you." "I'm sorry. I didn't tell you my identity immediately, and I didn't stop Feiyang in time." The masked old man said. The white-clothed woman shook her head and said, "You have your reasons for doing this. I won't blame you." As she spoke, she carried Qin Feiyang, got up, and glanced at the imperial palace. When he was alive, Feiyang hated this place the most. I hope that after he dies, you can find a pure land for him to bury. Don't let his soul be disturbed again. Now, I'll entrust this matter to you. The white-clothed woman handed Qin Feiyong to the masked old man. The masked old man took Qin Feiyong and asked, "What about you?" "You know I can't leave." The white-clothed woman shook her head. Sigh. The masked old man looked at the white-clothed woman for a long time. After a long sigh, he turned and flew into the sky. Whoosh! But at this time, Yiglao and the middle-aged man instantly stood in front of the masked old man. Yiglao said in a deep voice, "You can leave if you want to, but you have to leave Qin Feiyong here." The emperor glanced at Yiglao and the middle-aged man, then looked at old Qin and the three fake gods whose faces could not be seen clearly. He shouted, "Don't let them take Qin Feiyong away." Whoosh! The four of them immediately surrounded the masked old man, Yiglao, and the middle-aged man, their eyes flashing fiercely. "Do we really have to fight before we can leave?" However, if this old man were to act, someone would definitely die today. The masked old man looked at the gods with disdain, not showing the slightest fear. Die! No matter if it was Yiglao or Qin Wentian and the other three, when they heard the words of the masked old man, a cold sneer appeared in their eyes. They were all false divinities, yet they still dared to boast like that. How foolish! Boom! The six of them unleashed their auras and attacked the masked old man. The masked old man narrowed his eyes, revealing an extremely dangerous signal. It was like a sleeping lion that was about to awaken. But suddenly, the masked old man withdrew his gaze and lowered his head to look at Qin Feiyong in his arms. His eyes trembled slightly. Seeing this, Yiglao and the others raised their eyebrows and looked at Qin Feiyong. Immediately, the six of them narrowed their eyes. Qin Feiyong was still lying quietly in the arms of the masked old man. His eyes were closed and his face was pale. However, they could faintly sense that there was a faint life fluctuation within Qin Feiyong's body. How is this possible? Isn't he already dead? The six people's eyes were full of disbelief. Was it an illusion? However, this was not an illusion. Qin Feiyong really showed signs of life. And as time went by, this sign of life became more and more vigorous. The emperor, the woman in white, Zhuge Mingyang, the mysterious lady, and the commander of the Kirin army also quickly noticed this abnormality. Their eyes were also full of surprise. A person who was already dead unexpectedly showed signs of life. What was going on? "I knew you wouldn't die so easily." Mu Qing murmured, her eyes flashed and she shouted, "Yiglao, quickly protect Qin Feiyong." "You also protect him." The mysterious lady quivered and immediately shouted at the middle-aged man. Yiglao and the middle-aged man instantly changed sides and stood together with the masked old man, guarding against Qin Wentian and the other three. At the same time, below, the Mu family's ancestor and the second ancestor also firmly controlled the state preceptor. As long as Qin Wentian and the other three dared to make a move, they would not hesitate to kill the state preceptor. Boom! Suddenly, the red sword chi, the flame battle chi, and the purple gold dragon chi rushed out of Qin Feiyong's body one after another. The three types of battle chi intertwined together, exuding an unparalleled destructive aura. Battle chi recovery. This proves that he's not dead yet. Inside the spatial artifact, Lu Xingchen looked at this scene, and his eyes were also bursting with light. Not dead? Ran Wushuang and the others heard this, and their faces were instantly filled with ecstasy. He's not dead yet. Is this bastard a monster reincarnated? Zhuge Mingyang's eyes widened in anger. If Qin Feiyong really came back to life, then between him and Qin Feiyong, one of them would die in the other's hands sooner or later. The life fluctuations overflowing from Qin Feiyong's body became more and more amazing. Suddenly, a mysterious energy surged out of his body. This energy was repelling the masked old man, and it threatened him greatly. A hint of bewilderment flashed in his eyes as he tried to let go of Qin Feiyong. Qin Feiyong did not fall. Instead, he hovered in the air with his battle chi swirling around him. His expression was serene as though he was in a deep sleep. The mysterious energy surged even more violently. The masked old man, Yiglao, the middle-aged man, and old Qin began to retreat involuntarily. Roar! Clang! In the next moment, a loud dragon's roar rang in the air, followed by two deafening noises. The 9-leaf fire lotus, the red sword soul, and the purple gold dragon soul roared out of Qin Feiyong's body at almost the same time. When the 3 battle souls appeared, they immediately grew in size. Finally, the purple gold dragon soul was several thousand feet long. It was like a lofty mountain ridge as it spun around Qin Feiyong. Its dragon's might was vast and mighty. The red sword soul awakened on its own. It was like a huge sword that could split the heavens and earth. It hovered above Qin Feiyong, emanating a destructive aura. The flaming beast shadow that was hiding in the sword soul charged out as well. It roared in the air, its ferocious might unparalleled. As for the 9-leaf fire lotus, the 9 fire lotus leaves fell off on their own as well. However, they did not explode. Each of the fire lotus leaves was the size of a dustpan. They were like 9 red shields that surrounded Qin Feiyong. Waves of fire surged and swept across the sky for several miles. The sky and earth changed color at this moment. What's going on? The others looked at this scene in shock and confusion. It was common knowledge that battle souls would only appear when their masters were awakened. Currently, Qin Feiyong was unconscious. It was impossible for him to awaken his battle souls. However, why would the 3 battle souls appear? Could it be that the 3 battle souls had their own consciousness? Impossible. Battle souls were controlled by their master's will. It was impossible for them to have their own consciousness. However, if that was not the case, how could this be explained? Roar! At this moment, the purple gold dragon soul raised its head and roared. Suddenly, it dragged its huge body and soared into the sky. However, the red sword soul and the 9-leaf fire lotus did not move. They were like loyal guardians protecting their master, Qin Feiyong. Everyone's eyes followed the purple gold dragon soul as it rose into the sky. The purple gold dragon soul soared into the sky, entered the clouds, and disappeared. Where did it go? The others were puzzled. However, in the next moment, an even more majestic aura surged in the sky. However, it was not a dragon's might. It was an emperor's might. This emperor's might was many times more powerful than the current emperor's. As soon as the emperor's might appeared, everyone in the imperial capital felt a pressure that came from the depths of their souls. Even false gods like Yigleo and Old Qin could not help but want to worship it. At this moment, everyone looked at the rolling clouds in the sky. It felt as if an ancient great emperor had returned. What's going on? The emperor's eyes trembled. In the face of this emperor's might, even he could not help but feel terrified. Strong winds howled in the sky. The dark clouds gradually dispersed. When the scene within the dark clouds appeared before everyone's eyes, it was as if a sudden clap of thunder was roaring in everyone's minds. At the peak of the sky, the purple gold dragon soul had disappeared without a trace. However, there was a stone statue in its place. The stone statue was about 100 feet tall. It shone with a dazzling purple gold divine light. How's this possible? Looking at the stone statue, the current emperor shook his head frantically. His eyes were filled with disbelief. The stone statue's face was well-defined and carried a strong sense of vicissitudes. One could tell at a glance that it was a middle-aged man. His eyes were bright like the eyes of the heavens. They seemed to be able to see through all things and the world's origin energy. He was holding a sword in his hand. However, it was not a complete sword. It was a broken sword. There was no tip of the sword. Although the broken sword was only a stone statue, everyone could still feel the terrifying sharpness. They felt that as long as this person waved the sword, the world would shatter. Why did this stone statue appear? Old Qin and the other false gods, the commander of the Kirin army, Zhuge Mingyang, and everyone in the imperial palace turned pale with fright. This figure, this face, this broken sword, they were all too familiar with it. It had even been imprinted in the depths of their souls and could never be forgotten. Because the owner of this stone statue was the first emperor who founded the Great Qin Empire and left behind a world-shaking reputation. Moreover, this stone statue was exactly the same as the god statue worshipped by the mermaid clan. Its body that was over 30 meters tall was like a towering mountain, and it emitted an aura that made one feel despair. Qin Feiyong, quickly answer me. Why did the ancestors' god statue appear here? Suddenly, the emperor retracted his gaze and looked at Qin Feiyong, who was floating in the air, and roared hysterically. The Great Qin Empire had been around for tens of thousands of years. However, This was the first time that the god statue of the first emperor appeared. And this must have something to do with Qin Feiyang. However, Qin Feiyang closed his eyes tightly and did not give any answer to the emperor. If this child did not fall out with his majesty, he would definitely be the most suitable candidate for the next emperor. But now we must not let him live. Otherwise, in the future, it will definitely affect the fate of our great Qin Empire. Old Qin and the other false gods looked at each other, and a cold light surged in their eyes. They rushed towards Qin Feiyang at the same time. They were full of murderous intent. "How dare you!" the masked old man roared. Yiglao and the middle-aged man hurriedly chased to stop them. But after all, they were all false gods. As for Old Man Qin and the other three, they suddenly attacked without any warning. Therefore, it was too late for the masked old man and Yiglao to stop the four of them. As expected, Qin Feiyang would definitely be killed by the four of them. At the same time. Chapter 928. It seemed like Qin Feiyang was about to be killed by the four of them. Boom! In the skies. The stone statue of the first emperor suddenly released a purplish-gold divine light that enveloped Qin Feiyang. Puh! Old Qin and the others were sent flying by the purplish-gold divine light. Their bodies trembled as they spat out blood. Their eyes were filled with shock. The stone statue of the first emperor was protecting Qin Feiyang? Why was this happening? Soon after, an even more shocking scene appeared. The purplish-gold divine light carried the unconscious Qin Feiyang and slowly rose into the air. The nine-leaf fire lotus and the scarlet sword soul followed him and protected him. Finally, Qin Feiyang entered the skies and hovered before the stone statue. The purplish-gold divine light surged into his body. At this moment, every inch of his skin and every cell on his body shone with a dazzling purplish-gold light. What's going on? The others were shocked and puzzled. The appearance of the stone statue of the first emperor was already shocking enough. However, they did not expect it to protect Qin Feiyang. Ha ha! The masked old man suddenly laughed. Everyone looked at him. They did not know what he was laughing about. If I'm not mistaken, he must have obtained Emperor Qin's legacy. The masked old man enunciated each word clearly. His eyes shone brightly. What? Emperor Qin's legacy. As soon as he said this, everyone's bodies and minds trembled. Their minds buzzed. Just as everyone was feeling shocked by this, Qin Feiyang's body was also undergoing earth-shattering changes. Initially, all the blood in his body had been drained. However, at this moment, another strand of blood was born. However, this blood was not red. It was purplish gold. As soon as this strand of purplish gold blood appeared, it began to flow in his body. Finally, it entered his heart. Immediately, his heart shone with a dazzling purplish gold light. In the end, his entire heart turned purplish gold. At this moment, his heart, which had stopped beating, started to beat again. His vitality was also restored by more than half. At the same time, strands of purple gold blood were endlessly born from his heart. Like a stream, they flowed towards Qin Feiyang's limbs and bones. In the meantime, the broken blood vessels all over his body were also healing rapidly. About 10 breaths passed. The purple gold blood covered Qin Feiyang's entire body. His life force had already recovered to its peak. But he still did not wake up. He lay in front of the stone statue with a serene expression. Boom! Suddenly, his body was filled with a weak aura. This was not the aura of a fighting soul, but the aura of his own cultivation. Before his death, his cultivation had completely disappeared. However, at this moment, step by step, he began to recover. Martial artist, martial master, martial ancestor, battle king, battle emperor, battle master. In less than 100 breaths of time, his cultivation had returned to its peak state. 9-star war sect. But it did not stop there. His aura was still rising, as if he was about to break through the shackles and step into the battle saint realm. At this moment, his eyelids twitched, and then he suddenly opened his eyes. 2 rays of light shot out. His eyes didn't change much. They were still the same as before, dark and deep. However, his weakness had already disappeared. Just as he opened his eyes, a muffled explosion rang out from within his body. Boom! The aura around his body suddenly increased by several times. A shocking saint aura also surged out of his body. What? Not only did he not die, he even benefited from a disaster and broke through to the battle saint realm? Everyone was dumbstruck. Especially Zhuge Mingyang. His expression was extremely ugly. Back then, when Qin Feiyong had just entered the shrine, he was only a 1-star battlemaster. At that time, he was already a 9-star battlemaster, a full 8 small realms apart. But it had only been a few years, and he had already caught up to him? At this rate, surpassing him was only a matter of time. Am I not dead? What's going on with my cultivation? At the same time, Qin Feiyong muttered to himself as he lay in the air. The light in his eyes had already dissipated and was replaced by a trace of confusion. Soon, he noticed the purple gold divine light around his body, and the confusion in his eyes became even stronger. What was this? Why did it give him a very comfortable feeling, and his entire body was warm? Ancestor. When his gaze swept past the stone statue, it was the same as the Emperor and the others' reaction. It was filled with shock. After a long while, he came back to his senses. He immediately sensed a familiar aura. Mother's aura. Mu Qing's aura. And the aura of an emperor. Looks like I didn't die yet. Qin Feiyong muttered, the corner of his mouth pursing into a bitter smile. He had thought that he would definitely die after crippling his own bloodline, but he didn't expect that he would survive. What was even more unexpected was that he would experience 2 life and death tribulations in one day. He looked at the statue of the first emperor and muttered, "Did you save me?" The statue stood tall in the sky, like an ancient emperor looking down on the common people. Next, Qin Feiyong retracted his gaze and sank his mind into his body. Looking at the purple gold blood flowing in his body, his expression suddenly became dull. How did the blood become this color? Purple gold blood, purple gold divine light. Could it be the ancestor again? He raised his head to look at the stone statue again, his eyes full of surprise. Suddenly, the statue of the first emperor began to collapse, turning into a gorgeous rain of light. Roar! Following closely, accompanied by a loud dragon roar, a purple gold divine dragon rushed out of the rain of light. This is... Qin Feiyong's eyes widened. This purple gold divine dragon, although alive, was not made of flesh and blood. Wasn't this his purple gold dragon soul? Qin Feiyong understood. Back then, he had opened the purple gold dragon soul in the Mermaid clan's Holy Land because of the ancestors' approval. Although the statue in the Holy Land was carved from stone, it contained the ancestors' will. So, his purple gold dragon soul also had a trace of the ancestors' will. And now, when he was in danger, the ancestors' will appeared and saved him from danger. In other words, the statue he saw before was formed by the ancestors' will. Thank you, ancestor. From this moment on, I will cherish my life. Thinking of this, Qin Feiyong stood up and bowed 3 times in the direction where the statue disappeared. Not only did the ancestor save him, but he also helped him break through to the battle saint realm. It could be said that he was given a great fortune. And he had a premonition that the purple gold blood in his body was definitely not simple. Therefore, he was extremely grateful to the first emperor. Immediately, he looked at the purple gold dragon soul again and smiled. Thank you too. Roar! The purple gold dragon soul let out a long roar, turned into a waterfall, and fused into Qin Feiyong's body. And just as the purple gold dragon soul entered his body, his expression was slightly stunned. In his mind, a huge amount of information emerged. This information was very unfamiliar to him. What is it? Qin Feiyong calmed down and checked the information. Soon, a trace of bewilderment crept up in his eyes. This was actually a cultivation method of a battle art, called the Divine Dragon Art. Divine Dragon Art? Qin Feiyong frowned. Why did this name sound so familiar? Suddenly, his body trembled violently, and his face instantly revealed a look of ecstasy. He finally realized why the Divine Dragon Art gave him a sense of familiarity. Because this Divine Dragon Art was the battle art created by the first emperor. When he was young, he sneaked into the emperor's study and read an ancient history book. In this ancient history book, there was some information about the first emperor. Although there wasn't much information recorded, there was one thing that was clearly written. Back then, when the first emperor conquered the world, In addition to his own strength, he also controlled a super terrifying battle art. This battle art was the Divine Dragon Art. According to the records, the power of this Divine Dragon Art had already surpassed the limits of a perfect battle art. Back then, many of the tyrants who dominated a region were defeated by this Divine Dragon Art. There were even records that the previous emperor of the Tianyang Empire, Mu Tianyang, was also defeated by the Divine Dragon Art. One could imagine how terrifying this Divine Dragon Art was. But before the first emperor disappeared, he didn't leave behind the cultivation method of the Divine Dragon Art. Therefore, as time passed, the Divine Dragon Art became an ethereal legend. In the past, when Qin Feiyang read this ancient history, he didn't believe that there really was a Divine Dragon Art. Because it was too unbelievable. Beyond the limits of a perfect battle art, wasn't this equivalent to a divine art? How could there be a divine art in this world? But now it was different. After cultivating the 6-word divine art, his understanding of the divine art was deeper than anyone else. Perhaps this Divine Dragon Art was really a supreme divine art. Qin Feiyang suppressed his excitement, closed his eyes as if there was no one else around, and carefully read the cultivation method of the Divine Dragon Art. What is he doing now? Seeing this, everyone was suspicious. Don't need to comprehend? However, in less than 5 breaths, Qin Feiyang opened his eyes, and there was a hint of surprise between his eyebrows. This Divine Dragon Art was very profound, but at this moment in his mind, it was very clear and clear. Every single cultivation method was clearly displayed, including the true meaning and profound meaning of the Divine Dragon Art. There was no need for him to comprehend it all. He could easily grasp it. However, Qin Feiyang was clear in his heart. This was not because he was talented, but because he had obtained the inheritance of the first emperor. And it was a complete inheritance. But at the same time, he was very puzzled. He had opened the purple gold dragon soul for so long, but why did he only get this inheritance now? He raised his arm and opened his palm. A wisp of purple gold divine light emerged from his palm. That purple gold divine light was very small, about the size of a strand of hair, but it exuded a mighty dragon might, as if a real dragon had appeared. The emperor and the others below looked at the wisp of purple gold divine light, their eyes full of surprise. The masked old man's performance was particularly special. He stared firmly at the purple gold divine light, and there seemed to be a trace of disbelief in his old eyes. But there was also a hint of nervousness, anticipation, and even a hint of joy, which seemed extremely complicated. However, Qin Feiyang did not notice all of this. He also stared at the purple gold divine light, his heart full of doubts. A moment later, with a slight thought in his mind, more purple gold divine light emerged from his palm. A purple gold square seal quickly condensed. The square seal, which was as big as an adult's fist, floated in front of Qin Feiyang, emitting a dazzling radiance that illuminated the sky. At the bottom of the square seal was a vivid and lifelike purple gold divine dragon. Chapter 929. Whoosh. Seeing the square seal, the masked old man's eyes trembled slightly. He quickly rushed up to the sky and landed beside Qin Feiyang. Qin Feiyang looked at him suspiciously. Don't talk. The masked old man secretly transmitted his voice while carefully looking at the square seal. At the same time, the emperor and others below also stared at the square seal in shock. It's really the Divine Dragon Seal. The masked old man looked at the square seal for a moment, then looked at the bottom of the square seal. When he saw the purple gold dragon imprinted at the bottom of the square seal, his eyes were filled with shock. Qin Feiyang was stunned. He looked at the masked old man in shock and asked, "How did you know?" The Divine Dragon technique had a total of 4 moves. And this square seal was the first move, the Divine Dragon Seal. Not only do I know that this is the Divine Dragon Seal, but I also know that you have mastered the Divine Dragon technique. I also know that the blood in your body has changed. The masked old man laughed hoarsely. At the same time, he waved his hand and a wave of divine power swept out and flew toward Qin Feiyang's wrist. Before Qin Feiyang could react, he felt a pain coming from his wrist. When he looked down, there was a wound on his wrist. Wisps of purple gold blood slowly flowed out of the wound. Looking at the purple gold blood, Qin Feiyang's expression revealed a hint of bewilderment. When he looked inside his body, He didn't feel any aura from the blood. But now, when the purple gold blood flowed out of his body, it emitted a strong dragon aura, just like the blood of a dragon. What? Purple gold blood? The emperor and others also saw the purple gold blood, and their faces were full of disbelief. The masked old man looked at the purple gold blood with burning eyes and transmitted his voice. Do you know what blood this is? This is purple gold dragon blood. Dragon blood. Qin Feiyang's eyes trembled. That's right. Now the blood flowing in your body is dragon blood, and it's pure dragon blood. The masked old man nodded. Why is that? Qin Feiyang asked instinctively. His face was full of disbelief. Because you received the inheritance of the Qin Emperor. You know what? The blood in the Qin Emperor's body is also purple gold dragon blood. Furthermore, only those who possess the purple gold dragon blood can cultivate the divine dragon technique. As far as this old man knows, in this world, only you and the Qin Emperor possess the purple gold dragon's blood. The masked old man said. This, Qin Feiyang was dumbfounded. Shocked, aren't you? The masked old man asked with a smile. Yes. Qin Feiyang nodded. Then can you tell me where you obtained the inheritance of the Qin Emperor? The masked old man thought to himself. Human. Qin Feiyang was about to blurt out the words mermaid clan, but he suddenly became vigilant. The masked old man smiled and said, Actually, even if you don't tell me, this old man knows. You know? Qin Feiyang looked at him suspiciously. The masked old man smiled faintly and said, The mermaid clan's holy land, right? What? Qin Feiyang's body trembled violently, and his eyes were full of horror. He actually knew. Everyone thought that the Qin Emperor didn't leave the cultivation method of the divine dragon technique. But in fact, he did leave it. It's just that he left the inheritance of the divine dragon technique in the statue of the mermaid clan, waiting for a lucky descendant to inherit it. Coincidentally, you went to the mermaid clan and obtained this complete inheritance. Perhaps, it's not a coincidence that you can obtain this inheritance. It's the result that the Qin Emperor had long expected. The masked old man sighed, and there was an inexplicable emotion in his tone. Expected result? You mean the first emperor had expected that I would go to the mermaid clan 10,000 years ago? Qin Feiyang frowned. That's right. The masked old man nodded. Qin Feiyang didn't believe it. He knew that the first emperor was very strong. But to predict the future, this was simply a fantasy. One had to know. At that time, he wasn't even born. The masked old man glanced at Qin Feiyang, shook his head and said with a smile, This old man can only tell you that the strength of the Qin Emperor is not something you can imagine. Then tell me, I have activated the purple gold dragon soul for so long. Why did I only get the inheritance of the divine dragon technique today? Qin Feiyang said. This old man has already said before that to cultivate the divine dragon technique, you must have the purple gold dragon blood. In the past, although you were also a descendant of the Qin Emperor, you didn't really inherit the bloodline power of the Qin Emperor. To put it bluntly, in the past, you were not qualified to inherit this inheritance. The masked old man said. Qin Feiyang suddenly understood. The purple gold dragon blood was a necessary factor to cultivate the divine dragon technique. Without the purple gold dragon blood, it was naturally impossible. The masked old man continued. And this inheritance left by the Qin Emperor is also a test. Test? Qin Feiyang was stunned. Yes. Put yourself in a desperate situation and fight to live. Not everyone dares to cripple their own bloodline power. Especially a monster like you. Because the more talented a person is, the more they cherish their bloodline power. The masked old man said. I agree with this point. If not for the current emperor forcing me to this point, I wouldn't have done such a stupid thing like destroying my own bloodline power. Qin Feiyang sighed. Do you hate him? No, actually, you should thank him. If not for him forcing you, would you be able to awaken the purple gold dragon blood? Maybe you won't be able to awaken it in this lifetime. If you can't awaken the purple gold dragon blood, you won't be able to get the inheritance of the Qin Emperor. The masked old man smiled. Grateful. Qin Feiyang smiled coldly and asked, This purple gold dragon blood, other than being able to cultivate the divine dragon technique, does it have any other benefits? Of course. The most obvious one is your talent. After awakening the purple gold dragon blood, your talent and comprehension will increase exponentially. Your cultivation speed will at least be twice as fast as your current foundation. As for the other benefits, it's not convenient for me to say too much. I'll leave it to you to slowly discover. The masked old man said. Qin Feiyong was extremely excited. Putting aside his talent and comprehension, just his cultivation speed. After opening the door of potential, his cultivation speed was already very shocking. But now, he was actually able to double the speed on top of that. For example, he needed 1 year to cultivate from a 1-star battle saint to a 2-star battle saint. But now, he only needed half a year. This kind of speed was simply shocking to death. How do you know so clearly? Who are you? And why do you give me a familiar yet strange feeling? Qin Feiyong looked at the masked old man, his eyes full of confusion. Don't worry too much about this old man's identity. You'd better think about how to make the emperor sign that unfair contract. After all, if you can't make him agree, you won't be able to roam the forgotten continent in peace. The masked old man pondered for a while and smiled. Qin Feiyong frowned. He asked secretly, Senior, do you have any ideas? If you use the royal tutor or the young prince to threaten him, there's no doubt that it'll be a long tug of war. After all, he's the emperor of a nation. He won't be able to put down his pride in front of so many people. You can try another method. Who knows, it might be more effective than this one. The masked old man said. Try another method, Qin Feiyong muttered to himself. After a while he cupped his fists and said, Thank you for your advice, Senior. Huff. Next. He exhaled deeply. With a thought, the 9-leaf fire lotus and the crimson sword soul that were protecting him returned to his sea of qi. His gaze also turned cold and sharp. No matter what he had gone through, at least he had achieved his wish. From now on, he would have nothing to do with the emperor. Swoosh. He lowered his head and looked at the crowd below. Finally, his gaze fell on the emperor. His expression was no longer filled with pain and sadness. Instead, it was cold. It was as though he was looking at a stranger. Do you know what this is? Qin Feiyong waved his arm. The divine dragon seal hovering before him immediately expanded in the wind. Streams of terrifying aura surged out crazily, covering the sky and covering the earth as they rushed in all directions. Rumble. Finally. The divine dragon seal grew to several thousand feet in size. It was like a towering mountain. With the deafening sound of wind and thunder, it pressed down on the emperor. As they looked at the divine dragon seal, the emperor, old Qin, and the other false gods felt even more puzzled. What was that? Why did it give them a sense of déjà vu? Meanwhile, Lu Xingchen, who was hiding in the spatial divine item, looked at the divine dragon seal. A strange light flashed in the depths of his eyes. How familiar! A hint of confusion could be seen on the mysterious madam's face as well. What's that? Mu Qing was puzzled. I can't remember. The mysterious madam shook her head. It's the first form of the divine dragon technique, the divine dragon seal. At this moment, a slightly agitated voice rang in the air. The person who spoke was Qin Feiyong's mother. She was also looking at the divine dragon seal with a bright smile on her face. Divine dragon seal. However, when the emperor old Qin and the other false gods heard these 3 words, it was like a bolt from the blue. Their bodies and minds trembled. Their faces and eyes were filled with disbelief. Because of the white-clothed woman's reminder, they all remembered. They also finally knew what the purple gold blood that flowed out of Qin Feiyong's body was. Mu Qing looked at the expressions of the emperor and the others. She turned to the white-clothed woman and asked, Auntie, what is the divine dragon technique? The divine dragon technique is a battle technique created by the Qin emperor. Back then, he was able to suppress all the heroes mainly because of this divine dragon technique. And this divine dragon technique has already surpassed the boundary of a perfect battle technique. This time, it was the mysterious madam who spoke. There was a deep fear and shock in her eyes. It seemed that she was quite familiar with the Qin emperor. Surpassed the boundary of a perfect battle technique? Mu Qing's eyes widened in anger. Wasn't this the legendary divine technique? In other words, this bastard, after destroying his bloodline power, not only did his previous talent not disappear, But he also obtained a great fortune? Not only did his talent not disappear, it is even more terrifying than before. I can even predict that another Qin emperor is about to rise. Chapter 930. The divine dragon seal descended from the sky, and the dragon aura surged, shocking everyone present. The emperor's expression was quite ferocious at this moment. He suddenly rushed into the sky and shattered the divine dragon seal with a punch. This aura is exactly the same as the legendary divine dragon seal. His face was slightly dazed, and then he rushed into the sky and stood opposite Qin Feiyang. Quickly tell me, where did you get the inheritance of your ancestor? He looked a little exasperated at this moment. What's wrong? Are you feeling unbalanced? That's true. To think that you, the emperor of the great Qin Empire, didn't get the divine dragon technique, and now that I got it, you must feel bad. The corner of Qin Feiyang's mouth lifted, and he looked at him mockingly. The emperor's face was gloomy. Although you are the emperor, you don't have the purple gold dragon soul, purple gold dragon blood, or divine dragon technique. To be honest, I really feel sorry for you. Qin Feiyang shook his head. Enough! The emperor shouted angrily. Did I say anything wrong? Having the purple gold dragon soul, purple gold dragon blood, and divine dragon technique is the most orthodox descendant of the Qin emperor. Qin Feiyang sneered. The emperor's eyes turned cold, and he said in a deep voice, So, you plan to kill your father and usurp the throne? Haha. Qin Feiyang suddenly raised his head and laughed unscrupulously. Father? Wasn't this word a little too funny? Let me tell you, I have no interest in this bullshit emperor's position. I only care about my mother and my friends. Tell me, what do I have to do to make you promise not to hurt them? Qin Feiyang said. As long as you tell me where the inheritance came from, not only will I promise you not to hurt them in the future, but I will also make you the crown prince. The emperor said. Your Majesty, please reconsider. Qin Feiyang is now in a state of qi deviation, we can't let him come back. The current empress's face changed, and she hurriedly persuaded. If Qin Feiyang was made the crown prince, then what about the little prince? She would never allow such a thing to happen. Celestial Empress is right. The current Qin Feiyang is already blinded by hatred. If he is crowned as the crown prince, not only will the little prince suffer in the future, I'm afraid that even the other princesses will be harmed by him. Zhuge Mingyang knelt in the void and said respectfully to the emperor. Qin Feiyang lowered his head and looked at Zhuge Mingyang. What does it have to do with this person that the emperor conferred him the title of crown prince? Yes. Zhuge Mingyang was once the #1 monstrous genius in the imperial capital. And he was also the only son of Zhuge Wuhou. The emperor valued him greatly. But at the end of the day, he was just a subject. What right did he have to jump out and dissuade the emperor? Not to mention, even old Qin and the other semi-divinities had yet to express their opinions, so why would he rush out in such a hurry? In the meantime, the masked old man sized up Zhuge Mingyang with a thoughtful look in his eyes. Shut up, all of you. But in the face of the current Celestial Empress and Zhuge Mingyang's advice, the emperor's face showed extreme impatience. Right now, he only wanted to know where the inheritance of the divine dragon technique came from. Suddenly, Mu Qing's eyes flashed as he looked at Qin Feiyang and smiled. Brother Qin, I have a suggestion. Speak. Qin Feiyang said. Mu Qing said, let Zhuge Mingyang have a life-and-death battle with you. If you lose, tell him where the inheritance came from. Zhuge Mingyang's pupils shrank. Qin Feiyang's eyes lit up as he nodded and said, Good idea. Of course, he knew Mu Qing's inner thoughts. He wanted to use his hands to get rid of Zhuge Mingyang and avenge Mu Xueqi. But even if he was used by Mu Qing now, he didn't care. Because he also wanted to get rid of Zhuge Mingyang. He always felt that if this Zhuge Mingyang didn't die, he would pose a great threat to him sooner or later. So, it was better to take this opportunity to get rid of future troubles forever. How about this suggestion? If I lose, I'll tell you everything you want to know. But if I win, I want you to personally draw up a contract and announce it to the world. Qin Feiyang looked at the emperor and said. The emperor turned his head to look at Zhuge Mingyang, his expression uncertain. He was very clear about Zhuge Mingyang's strength. In the entire great Qin Empire, almost no one in the younger generation was his opponent. But he knew Qin Feiyong's strength better. A few years ago, he suppressed his realm and fought with Qin Feiyong, but in the end, he was defeated by Qin Feiyong. This proved that with Qin Feiyong's ability, it was sufficient for him to reign supreme in the same realm. If Qin Feiyong's cultivation was weaker than Zhuge Mingyang's, he wouldn't hesitate. But now, Qin Feiyong was also a one-star battle saint and had mastered the ancestors' divine dragon art. And he also had the six-word divine art. If the two of them fought, he didn't have much confidence in Zhuge Mingyang. I really didn't expect that there would be a time when you don't dare to nod. Qin Feiyong shook his head. The sarcasm on his face was undisguised. The emperor clenched his hands. Why don't you do it? Just like a few years ago, suppress your cultivation to the same realm as mine. Qin Feiyong laughed mockingly. The emperor's face was ashen. The battle a few years ago could be said to be the stain of his life. Although the people in the imperial capital didn't dare to talk about it in front of him, they gossiped a lot behind his back. Sometimes, he even heard some palace maids and guards talking about it in private. Every time he heard these discussions, he felt a sense of shame in his heart. It was like a sharp blade was ruthlessly stabbing into his heart, making him feel very uncomfortable. And now, Qin Feiyong once again brought up this matter in front of everyone. The anger in his heart soared straight up to a critical point. Qin Feiyong, don't go too far. Zhuge Mingyang glanced at the emperor, stared at Qin Feiyong and shouted, Do you have the right to speak here? Qin Feiyong smiled contemptuously. Zhuge Mingyang's eyes were gloomy to the extreme. He bowed and said, Your Majesty, I accept his challenge. The emperor was stunned. Qin Feiyong was stunned. Mu Qing's face was also filled with shock. After fighting with Qin Feiyong for so many years, Mu Qing was very clear about Qin Feiyong's strength. In the battle between Zhuge Mingyang and Qin Feiyong, there was no chance of victory at all. He thought that Zhuge Mingyang wouldn't have the guts to accept. But he didn't expect that he would accept. Where did he get the courage to fight with Qin Feiyong? Your Majesty, although I may not be his opponent, I'm willing to defend your dignity with my life. Zhuge Mingyang knelt in the void and said firmly. There was a determined light in his eyes. Good. The emperor nodded repeatedly. He was very happy. In fact, he had no other choice now. Because in the whole younger generation of the imperial capital, only Zhuge Mingyang had the ability to fight with Qin Feiyong. What do you want to do? Qin Feiyong murmured. Zhuge Mingyang's attitude was really too abnormal. To please the emperor? But for Zhuge Mingyang, it didn't seem to be necessary at all. Because the emperor thought highly of him. 4 other young talents, if they wanted to enter the imperial palace, they had to be notified and approved. But every time Zhuge Mingyang entered the imperial palace, he didn't notify anyone. For example, this time, he came as he pleased. And when the emperor saw Zhuge Mingyang barging in without permission, he didn't say anything. It was equivalent to acquiescing that Zhuge Mingyang could enter and leave the imperial palace freely. For a subject of the great Qin Empire, this could be said to be a kind of supreme honor. Qin Feiyong couldn't figure it out. What was Zhuge Mingyang thinking? Whoosh! Just when Qin Feiyong was puzzled, Zhuge Mingyang got up and rushed to the emperor's side. Boom! His aura exploded. Come on! I will prove to the world that I, Zhuge Mingyang, am the #1 evildoer of the imperial capital. He looked at Qin Feiyong and said word by word. His aura was like a rainbow, shaking the sky. #1 evildoer. Qin Feiyong murmured, his body shook violently, and the saint's aura roared in all directions. The emperor and the masked old man both retreated to the distance at the same time. But before the emperor retreated, he said such a sentence. You are not allowed to use any weapons. Because Xueqi and the ancient castle, the lethality was too shocking. If Qin Feiyong took out these 2 artifacts, Zhuge Mingyang wouldn't even have the slightest resistance. So, he wanted to put an end to this situation. Qin Feiyong glanced at the emperor and said lightly, You worry too much, just Zhuge Mingyang, I don't need to use weapons. Arrogant. Zhuge Mingyang was furious. With the billowing saint's aura, he took a step forward, raised his fist, and threw a punch at Qin Feiyong. Yes, I am arrogant. Because I am no longer the Qin Feiyong of the past. Qin Feiyong roared, raised his arm, and threw a punch without dodging. Boom! The two fists met with a loud bang. A destructive airwave, like a tide, rolled out in all directions with the two of them as the center. At this moment, the void within a few miles twisted crazily, as if it was about to shatter. Humph! The two of them snorted at the same time, and their bodies retreated uncontrollably. I remember that in the Black Dragon Swamp, you forced us into a desperate situation with your own strength, and almost killed us. But now, is this all you've got? Qin Feiyang stepped into the void, stabilized his body, and then roared and rushed toward Zhuge Mingyang again. I only hate that I didn't kill you back then. Zhuge Mingyang's eyes were filled with murderous intent. He pushed his hands out, and a majestic battle chi roared out. That battle chi was very special. It was green in color. At first glance, it looked like an ancient green dragon, roaring in the sky, containing a shocking destructive force. And that battle chi also exuded a strong dragon's aura. What? Qin Feiyang's pupils contracted. As everyone knew, the aura of battle chi was based on the battle soul. Battle chi that contained dragon's aura. Could it be that Zhuge Mingyang had also activated some kind of dragon soul? Boom! He clenched his fist, and the flaming battle chi surged out. At this moment, his whole body was burning with raging flames, as if he had turned into a man of fire. I would like to see how capable you are. Immediately. Qin Feiyang squinted his eyes, and a sharp light flashed, and he punched toward Zhuge Mingyang's battle chi. Accompanied by a loud bang, the roaring battle chi was dispersed. This dragon's aura. Qin Feiyang's eyes trembled. After activating the purple gold dragon soul and purple gold dragon blood, he was very sensitive to dragon's aura. When he touched Zhuge Mingyang's battle chi, he could clearly feel that the dragon's aura contained in the battle chi was not an ordinary dragon's aura. The dragon's aura was very pure, and it gave people a strong sense of oppression. Chapter 931. Qin Feiyang stabilized himself in the air. Looking at Zhuge Mingyang opposite him, he said, I didn't expect you to have also activated the dragon's soul. There are still many things you can't imagine. Zhuge Mingyang smiled coldly. The battle chi in his chi-si poured out, covering the sky and rushing towards Qin Feiyang. Is that so? Qin Feiyang's body shook, the flame battle chi emerged, the fire waves rolling, sweeping across the sky. At this moment, he was like a fire god, standing in the flames, his long hair fluttering in the wind. You've already piqued my interest. I hope you won't disappoint me in the end. Qin Feiyang pointed to the sky. The fire waves around his body immediately rushed towards Mu Qing's battle chi. It was like a giant flame python, dozens of feet long, baring its fangs and brandishing its claws, fierce and threatening. Boom! The two battle chi collided, exploding with an earth-shattering sound. At the same time, both of their bodies trembled, and a trace of blood flowed out from the corner of their mouths. Bang, bang, bang! But the two of them did not stop at all, and rushed towards each other again. Immediately, a hand-to-hand battle unfolded in the sky. Neither of them used any battle arts, nor activated their battle souls. Their fists hit the flesh, and it was difficult to tell who was the winner. In terms of strength alone, Zhuge Mingyang is not inferior to Qin Feiyang. To be able to stand shoulder to shoulder with Qin Feiyang, this child is also an amazing person. Lady Mysterious whispered. I don't deny his strength. But now, Qin Feiyang is only warming up, the real means are yet to come. Mu Qing stared firmly at Zhuge Mingyang, the murderous intent in his eyes growing stronger. Boom! Kacha! Whether it was Qin Feiyang or Zhuge Mingyang, their speed was at the extreme. The two of them constantly collided in the sky. Those below the battle sage realm could not catch their figures at all, and could only hear the deafening collision sounds. About 100 breaths passed. The battle between the two had already reached its climax. It was unprecedentedly intense. This was also Qin Feiyang's first time fighting to his heart's content. He felt that the blood in his body was about to boil. Her fighting spirit soared to the heavens. Zhuge Mingyang didn't back down either. Like a god of war, the more he fought, the braver he became. Bang! Another few hundred breaths passed. After a fierce collision, the two of them finally separated. They stood at the top of the clouds and looked at each other. There were wounds of varying degrees on their bodies. However, There was no sign of weakness between their brows, and the aura they exuded was even more powerful. It's been so long, the warm-up should be over. Can we get serious now? Qin Feiyang spoke. His eyes were like lightning, appearing extremely fierce. As you wish. Azure Dragon's secret art. Dragons roar to the heavens. Zhuge Mingyang raised his head and roared. Battle chi surged out of his body. Ding! Following a loud dragon roar, an enormous beast appeared in the sky. It was an azure divine dragon. It was a few hundred zhang long, like a mountain ridge, flying above Zhuge Mingyang's head. Tear him apart. Next. Zhuge Mingyang pointed at Qin Feiyang from afar. Murderous intent flickered in his eyes. That mystical dragon immediately turned around and charged towards Qin Feiyang with a monstrous aura. Qin Feiyang's eyes glinted. With his current strength, he could tell at a glance that the so-called Azure Dragon's secret art was a perfect battle art. Furthermore, it had reached the peak of a perfect battle art. In other words, the Azure Dragon's secret art alone was enough to make Zhuge Mingyang the strongest among those of the same cultivation level. But this time, Zhuge Mingyang was unlucky to have encountered him. The fourth style of the Oasis technique, Oasis End. Qin Feiyang raised his arm and pointed his index finger in the air. An invisible force immediately roared out. The fourth style of the Oasis technique could also unleash the destructive power of a perfect battle art. Boom! Following a thunderous explosion, the two battle arts clashed in the air, emitting a blinding light. Heaven and earth lost their color at this moment. Puff! Both of them spat out a mouthful of blood at the same time. Their faces were slightly pale. That's all there is to it. Qin Feiyang smiled faintly. What's the rush? The best part is yet to come. Zhuge Mingyang wiped the blood from the corner of his mouth and placed his hands in front of his chest, quickly forming seals. A destructive aura spread out from his hands like a volcanic eruption. Almost at the next moment, an eye appeared in between his hands. The eye was tightly shut. It was the size of a pebble and emitted waves of dragon aura, just like the eye of a dragon. That destructive aura had originated from that eye. Azure Dragon's secret art. Second style, Azure Dragon Eye, Destruction. Zhuge Mingyang let out a low roar. His eyes suddenly opened and shot out a bright beam of light. As soon as the light beam appeared, the destructive aura became even more terrifying. Qin Feiyang's pupils contracted. The destructive power contained in the light beam was almost at the critical point of a perfect battle art and a god technique. He also stopped looking down on them. After all, as the former #1 monster in the imperial capital, how could he not have some trump cards? If he was careless, he might suffer a great loss. Guiyuan sword technique. Qin Feiyang waved his hand and a red sword aura surged out, rushing into the sky like a waterfall. Clang! In the blink of an eye, 40 flaming sword shadows condensed. Each of them was dozens of feet long and emitted a destructive aura. The number of sword shadows formed by the Guiyuan sword technique was completely dependent on his cultivation level. Battle Monarch, 10. Battle Emperor, 20. Battle Master, 30. Now that he had broken through to the Battle Saint level, he could form 40 sword shadows. 40 sword shadows were equivalent to 40 killing moves. This was not something that an ordinary person could bear. It could even be said that even if one's cultivation level was higher than Qin Feiyang's, they might not be able to bear it. In short, the higher Qin Feiyang's cultivation level, the more terrifying the power of the Guiyuan sword technique. Clang! When the 40 sword shadows appeared, Qin Feiyang controlled a sword shadow and slashed at the light beam. Boom! Crack! Accompanied by a loud sound, the sword shadow was instantly shattered by the light beam. Qin Feiyang's body trembled, and a trace of blood flowed from the corner of his mouth. In his heart, he was also quite surprised. Once, he had also faced many strong enemies. For example, in the 9 Nether Yellow Springs, he fought with the monsters of the 9 prefectures. The methods of these monsters were obvious to everyone, but as long as their cultivation level was not higher than Qin Feiyang's, they would not be able to block the Guiyuan sword technique. However, at this moment, that beam of light seemed to have destroyed one of his sword shadows effortlessly, but its power was not just ordinary frightening. I said the good show is yet to come. Looking at Qin Feiyang's shocked expression, Zhuge Mingyang's eyes revealed a trace of disdain. Isn't it a bit too early to be complacent? Qin Feiyong sneered, and the sword shadows above his head slashed at the light beam one after another. Clang! The sword shadows kept shattering. Waves of destructive air waves rolled out in all directions like a tide. The void within a radius of dozens of miles was crazily distorted. Even the sky was trembling. Qin Feiyong stood in the void, and his face was getting paler and paler. Because every time a sword shadow was shattered, his body would suffer a heavy blow. Blood flowed from the corner of his mouth. But he was like Mount Tai, motionless. Look at Zhuge Mingyang. Although he had the upper hand, there was not a trace of joy on his face. Even the disdain he showed before had disappeared and was replaced by a trace of seriousness. And if one looked carefully, one would find that his hands on his chest were slightly trembling. It was obvious. Those sword shadows also caused him a lot of pressure. Boom! When the 20th sword shadow slashed at the light beam finally collapsed. Puff! The Azure Dragon's eye was also shattered. Zhuge Mingyang also spat out a mouthful of blood. I'd like to see how you're going to take the remaining 20 sword shadows. Qin Feiyong sneered. The 20 sword shadows all moved in an instant and slashed at Zhuge Mingyang. Looking at this scene, the emperor's heart sank. Zhuge Mingyang's performance was not bad, but anyone with a discerning eye could see that he was not as good as Qin Feiyong. You shouldn't have bet on Zhuge Mingyang. Mu Qing looked at the emperor, without the slightest respect, and full of sarcasm. The emperor glanced at him coldly, but said nothing. He looked at Zhuge Mingyang again. And the hands hidden in the sleeves were already clenched. Clang! In the blink of an eye, the 20 sword shadows had already appeared above Zhuge Mingyang. The terrifying sharpness tore his skin. In an instant, he became a bloody man. However, Zhuge Mingyang's expression did not show the slightest panic or fear. He stared at the 20 sword shadows, his eyes flashing fiercely. Suddenly, he leaped, not retreating, but advancing, taking the initiative to meet the 20 sword shadows with his flesh and blood. What? Does he want to die? Qin Feiyong's gaze trembled. Mu Qing and the others below were also stunned. One must know. Each of these sword shadows was comparable to a perfect battle art. In other words, with Qin Feiyong's current cultivation, the power of each sword shadow was comparable to a full blow from a 5-star battle saint. And Zhuge Mingyang was only a 1-star battle saint, yet he wanted to meet it with his flesh and blood. If this was not courting death, what was? Zhuge Mingyang, don't be rash. Old Qin could not help but shout. But Zhuge Mingyang turned a deaf ear to him, the fierceness in his eyes becoming more intense. Qin Feiyong, now I'll show you my true strength. The third move, Green Dragon Celestial Phenomenon. With a roar, he raised his fist and punched the 20 sword shadows. Qin Feiyong stared at Zhuge Mingyang. Although he did not know much about Zhuge Mingyang's character, he would definitely not bluff. Perhaps this person really had something to rely on. Suddenly, Qin Feiyong's eyes showed a trace of surprise. Just before Zhuge Mingyang's fist met the 20 sword shadows, Zhuge Mingyang's fist suddenly rushed out a gust of battle qi. Following closely, that gust of battle qi turned into a green dragon, crushing the 20 sword shadows as easily as crushing dry weeds and smashing rotten wood. The whole process took less than half a breath, and all the sword shadows turned into ashes. How is this possible? Qin Feiyong spat out blood, his eyes full of disbelief. Mu Qing and the others below were also shocked. In an instant, 20 sword shadows were crushed. What level of battle art was this green dragon's secret art? Divine art. Chapter 932. At this moment, the bright sky palace fell into a dead silence. Everyone raised their heads and looked at Zhuge Mingyang in disbelief, including Yiglao, Old Qin, and the other false gods. The strength that Zhuge Mingyang displayed was far beyond their expectations. They thought that Zhuge Mingyang wouldn't have much power to fight back against the monstrous Qin Feiyong. However, they didn't expect that Qin Feiyong would be suppressed by Zhuge Mingyang instead. The shock in Qin Feiyong's heart couldn't dissipate for a long time. Without a doubt, this Azure Dragon's secret art must be a divine art. Zhuge Mingyang actually mastered a divine art. This was too unbelievable. Roar! At the same time, after crushing the 20-sword shadows, the Azure Dragon didn't disappear and turned to roar at Qin Feiyong. Its momentum was earth-shattering and terrifying, and its speed was extremely fast. In the blink of an eye, it swept in front of Qin Feiyong and crashed into Qin Feiyong's chest. Poof! Qin Feiyong spat out a mouthful of blood and was sent flying on the spot. And his chest was badly mutilated, with purple gold blood flowing out. His internal organs were also seriously injured. If you had used all your strength from the beginning, you wouldn't have fallen to this point. So, don't underestimate anyone, especially me, Zhuge Mingyang. Zhuge Mingyang stood proudly in the air and looked at Qin Feiyong contemptuously. He shouted, "Destroy him for me!" Roar! The Azure Dragon roared and rushed at Qin Feiyong again, the dragon's aura rolling in all directions. Qin Feiyong felt a deadly sense of crisis even before he got close. He finally came to his senses, and a fierce light flashed in his eyes. Boom! He raised his arm without hesitation and slammed his palm in the air. Return formula. A golden light emerged from his palm and turned into a huge wave that rushed at the Azure Dragon. Rumble! With a loud bang, the golden light and the Azure Dragon were locked in a stalemate in the void. The destructive aura shook the heavens. Looking at this scene, Qin Feiyong's eyes trembled. It could actually contend with the return formula. If this Azure Dragon's secret art was not a divine secret art, then what was it? A divine art. Where did Zhuge Mingyang get it? Self-created? That was impossible. It wasn't that he looked down on Zhuge Mingyang, but that the divine art was too profound. In this world, it was likely that only deities would understand the profound meaning of deity arts. Only by knowing the profound would one have the chance to create a divine art. Like him. Although he had mastered the 6-word divine formula and the divine dragon formula, he was not very clear about the profoundness of these two divine formulas. Therefore, this Azure Dragon's secret art must have been obtained by Zhuge Mingyang by chance. But where was it? The great Qin Empire had a divine art? Or was the Azure Dragon's secret art given to Zhuge Mingyang by someone? Given. At this point, he suddenly thought of Elder Qin, the state preceptor, and the other 4 false gods. Because these 5 were all false gods, they might really have some divine arts. However, when he looked at the 5 of them, he found that Elder Qin and the state preceptor were both shocked. Obviously, they only just found out. As for the other 3, although they were shrouded in black mist and their expressions could not be seen, it was definitely not them. Because, if the Azure Dragon's secret art was really taught to Zhuge Mingyang by them, then the state preceptor and Elder Qin would definitely know. After all, they were all false gods of the great Qin Empire, so they must be very familiar with each other. The most important point was, although they were all false gods in the great Qin Empire, the emperor was the one with the real power. Therefore, no matter what they wanted to do, they had to ask the emperor first. This was the system. No matter how strong you were, no matter how long you lived, you had to maintain a certain level of respect for the emperor. But now, the emperor was also surprised. Therefore, he could basically conclude that the Azure Dragon's secret art had nothing to do with these people. Oh well. Just as Qin Feiyong was puzzled, the stalemate was finally broken. The Azure Dragon suddenly howled and turned around, crashing into Zhuge Mingyang's body like lightning. Ah! Zhuge Mingyang let out a blood-curdling scream as his entire body flew out like a meteorite. The skin on his body instantly cracked and blood splattered into the sky. It seems that the divine art that I have mastered is still stronger. Qin Feiyong's spirit was greatly boosted as he immediately rushed towards Zhuge Mingyang with monstrous killing intent. Seeing how powerful Zhuge Mingyang was, he did not dare to drag it on any longer. Because he was worried that this person might still have some tricks up his sleeve, so he had to end this battle as soon as possible. And now, Zhuge Mingyang was severely injured by his divine art, which was undoubtedly a good opportunity. You lost just like that? The emperor muttered. Zhuge Mingyang's performance did not disappoint him. After all, his opponent was Qin Feiyong. It was already very good for him to be able to fight like this. But he was not satisfied that he could not get an answer from Qin Feiyong. Xueqi, the person who killed you will soon get his retribution. You can rest in peace. Mu Qing was also muttering to herself with a trace of relief on her face. All these years, because of Mu Xueqi's death, he had been living in self-blame and guilt, unable to find peace at all. Although he did not kill Zhuge Mingyang with his own hands, he still had a part of the credit. It could be considered as revenge for this blood feud. Not only the emperor and Mu Qing, but at this moment, everyone present thought that Zhuge Mingyang had reached the end of his road. Your Majesty, Zhuge Mingyang is a talent. We can't let him die in the hands of Qin Feiyong. Let him admit defeat quickly. Yes, if he is trained well, he will definitely do something in the future. In the future, he may even be the only one who can stop Qin Feiyong. Elder Qin and the other fake gods were secretly transmitting voice messages to the emperor, looking extremely anxious. The emperor was in a dilemma. But in the end, he listened to Elder Qin and the others and shouted, Zhuge Mingyang, I order you to admit defeat immediately. Admit defeat? Hearing this, Qin Feiyong raised his eyebrows. Instead of stopping, he used the phantom steps to maximize his speed. No matter what, he had to kill this person today. However, Zhuge Mingyang did not show any signs of admitting defeat at all. His eyes were sharper than before. Boom! Suddenly, he stepped into the void, stabilized his body, looked down at the emperor, and said, Your Majesty, I'm sorry, I can't obey. How dare you? The emperor was angry. I, Zhuge Mingyang, have never admitted defeat in my life. Especially in front of Qin Feiyong, I can't admit defeat. Zhuge Mingyang said word by word, his eyes filled with determination. Finished. He ignored the emperor and looked up at Qin Feiyong shouting, Today, one of you must die here. Qin Feiyong coldly smiled and said, That's what I think too. Then let's fight. Zhuge Mingyang was so angry that his hair stood on end. A terrifying dragon's might roared out from his body. Roar! Immediately after, a behemoth rushed out from behind him. That divine dragon was hundreds of feet long, covered with blue dragon scales the size of a dustpan, and 4 dragon claws under its abdomen, obviously hard and powerful. Azure Dragon. Qin Feiyong's pupils shrank. According to legend, in ancient times, there were 4 divine beasts that could overturn rivers and seas and cover the sky with one hand. They were the Azure Dragon, White Tiger, Black Tortoise, and Vermilion Bird. Although these 4 divine beasts were not as powerful as the purple gold divine dragon, in the eyes of the world, they were godlike existences. Who would have thought that Zhuge Mingyang would actually activate the Azure Dragon Fighting Soul? Azure Dragon Fighting Soul, coupled with the powerful Azure Dragon secret art, this Zhuge Mingyang was simply impeccable. Roar! Looking at the roaring Azure Dragon Fighting Soul in the sky, many people felt a sense of awe. But Qin Feiyong, on the other hand, was boiling with battle intent. Clang! With a giant sword that could tear the sky and earth apart, a red sword soul appeared. Kill! Both of them shouted at the same time. The Azure Dragon Fighting Soul and the red sword soul pierced through the sky, crazily colliding in the void. The dragon might was torrential, and the sword radiance was boundless. The 2 fighting souls carried the will of their respective masters, competing against each other, neither of them wanting to be at a disadvantage. What the hell is this bastard doing? Mu Qing was extremely angry. The Qin Feiyong in front of him was not the Qin Feiyong he knew. Just a mere Zhuge Mingyang. How could he not be able to deal with it? You can't blame Qin Feiyong for this. You can only say that Zhuge Mingyang is too strong. Madame Mystery whispered. Of course. The Qin Feiyong they knew didn't only have this many tricks up his sleeve. High up in the sky, the 2 fighting souls were locked in a fierce battle. And every time they collided, as the masters, Qin Feiyong and Zhuge Mingyang, as if they were struck by lightning, streaks of blood constantly flowed from the corners of their mouths. Roar! Suddenly, a loud beast roar resounded, shaking the sky. Next, the flaming beast shadow roared out from the red sword soul, exuding a terrifying ferocious aura. Every time I see this flaming beast shadow, I feel that it's unbelievable. Yeah, there's a beast soul hidden in the sword soul. If I didn't see it with my own eyes, I wouldn't have believed it. In the space divine item, Dong Zhongyang and the others looked at the sword soul and the beast shadow on the screen, exclaiming in amazement. I don't know if you guys have noticed that the beast shadow contains a trace of divine aura. At the same time, Elder Qin, who was outside, secretly transmitted a message to the 3 false gods shrouded in black fog. The 3 of them stared at the flaming beast shadow and nodded slightly. Roar! Clang! As soon as the flaming beast shadow appeared, it and the red sword soul pounced on the azure dragon fighting soul. And the aura of the flaming beast shadow was even stronger than that of the sword soul. In less than half a blink of an eye, the beast shadow and the sword soul had both arrived. The azure dragon fighting soul immediately suffered a devastating blow. Its huge body quickly cracked and collapsed. It kept wailing, just like Zhuge Mingyang, whose eyes were filled with unwillingness. He had tried his best, but why was he still no match for Qin Feiyang? Could it be that Qin Feiyang was really unbeatable? He was not convinced. He, Zhuge Mingyang, was the #1 demon in the imperial capital. What was Qin Feiyang? Innate ability, destruction. He roared towards the sky, his long hair fluttering. The azure dragon fighting soul disintegrated, but it did not dissipate, turning into an obscure aura. This aura was formless and colorless, like a raging wave in the ocean, instantly sweeping across the sky and drowning Qin Feiyang. When this aura enveloped him, Qin Feiyang's expression changed. His cultivation had actually dropped by a realm. From a 1-star battle saint, he instantly fell to a 9-star battle master. How could this be? You're tuning in to the Xueqi's Martial Arts Saga YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.